Hey, fellow tennis nerds. I hope all is well. Welcome to another episode of the Tennis Nerd Podcast. Today I'm with Tony Wright, a USPTA coach from Balance Tennis. He has some very funny meme stuff that I really like on his Instagram. He's an excellent coach based out in Newport, beautiful location. And today we're going to talk about all things tennis, how he's got into the sport, and how he became a coach, and so on. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome to it. Tony, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. That's a great intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's you get used to them after a while. Like it's important part of the content creation process. So yeah, getting into that, like you have a really funny content on your Instagram. Like how do you come up with this stuff? Like using kind of like cinematic references into tennis, which I find really amusing.
Um, I guess it's a little bit of my personal. I'm really big, so tennis is obviously a huge part of my life, but I love movies and cinema and series and just the art of storytelling. This is actually what I studied in school, basically, in the brief time I was in school. So I'm always watching movies, and to be honest, it's just there's stuff like that I think exists for other sports and other things, just you know, cultural references, I guess. And I don't know. I think I'm kind of early on the game of doing that when it comes to tennis and, content like that, basically. Something it wasn't the original idea with my page, but my page has kind of morphed into a bunch of different things over the 3 years I've been doing it, and it's connected very well, I'd say, and it's actually a lot of fun to be making them.
That's nice. Yeah, no, I really, really find them amusing. And I'm also a big cultural reference guy, right? So, studied writing, like kind of, fiction writing, fiction in general. Do you have anything you're watching right now that you can recommend? Because I'm not watching a lot of fiction at the moment.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I just finished watching, and I'm late to it because I've seen. So a lot of what I'll do is I'll be going on Reels and I'll just look at movie clips and stuff like that. And The Boys, have you seen that yet? It's
No, I
a
haven't.
series on Amazon. It's dark, dude. It's like a realistic take on like what if superheroes actually existed in the world, and I kind of stayed away from it for a couple years because I was like, there's so much, it's just saturated, so much superhero stuff. But I've seen this character Homelander, who's like a complete psychopath. Basically, imagine Superman, in so many memes and stuff, and I didn't quite get it. And so eventually, I was kind of like, well, you know what? I should watch this series so maybe I can use this for something. But I want to understand what it is first. And I just watched 3 seasons of that last week, and it's good. It's easy to get sucked into, but it's a little dark. I don't know what your taste is like, but like it's really good.
Yeah, I like that stuff. I mean, I like all kinds of fiction generally, and depends a
Right.
little bit on the mood, of course, right? You know that how it works, right? It's like if you're feeling, oh, I want to watch something like that. That's kind of like I guess Black Mirror stuff, where it's pretty dark and
Yeah.
edgy.
That's
Uh,
stuff that I started The Boys with my wife, and she's like, "You're on your own. Like you're."
yeah,
So I was like, "Yeah, okay, not for everyone."
everybody has different tastes, so it's sometimes hard to find like a joint passion, But we have a joint passion in tennis, so that's great. Like, so you started creative writing. How did you get into tennis? When did you start in your life with tennis?
So I started tennis to be competitive. It was super late. I think I started when I was sometime between 11 and 12 years old. I played different sports, traditional American stuff, t-ball, soccer, football. Um, and nothing really stuck when I was a kid. I enjoyed running around. I was fairly athletic, and I got into skateboarding and was doing that. Um, and then my parents were basically divorced, so I would go see my dad on the weekends, and just I think he was just trying to figure out what to do with me. And he's like, "Hey, let's get into tennis. I just moved to this place. There's tennis courts across the street." And I really didn't want to do it. I thought it was like super lame, to be honest, because I thought I was a skater kid. And it was like a city class once every Sunday, and I kind of figured out the basics. And then my dad would take me every weekend out to this park and just kind of feed me balls, and I started to really enjoy it. It was crazy. Like typical Walmart situation, the balls that came in that little mesh sack that don't bounce, and really just trying to figure out how to play this game. And yeah, he was learning as I was learning, so we kind of were able to rally with each other. And then it was just a public park, basically. So there was like a core group of like these Samoan guys who would come. like sometimes directly from their construction job. They would come with their lunch pail and boots and switch out into like their tennis gear, and they would kind of take over 4 courts at this park, and they allowed me to hit with them basically. And little by little, I kind of picked up the sport like that, and it was actually a lot of fun. They were like huge, scary dudes, you know, a bunch of tattoos, but they were so nice and so joyful on the tennis court, and were really it was really nice of them to include me in their group. And so basically, from that, I had like a solid group of people to hit with, pretty much 5 days a week, whenever I could get to the park. And I took 1 or 2 lessons. I was a part of junior team tennis, which wasn't super competitive. I thought I was, you know, getting really good. Basically, I saw a coach. I was serving in the classic like Western forehand grip basically, until he was like, "Hey man, you can't play like this. Like this is your ceiling. This is as good as you're gonna get." And it kind of ruined my life for like 6 months until I figured out how to properly do it. Played high school tennis. Nobody in my family had ever played, so they thought, hey, if you make a varsity team, great, you're a good player. And obviously did that, won my league, all of that stuff. Didn't really know what I wanted to do education wise, so I went to junior college, and that's where I started studying. You know, I fell into film and, you know, storytelling, stuff like that. Basically, played on the junior college team. I met for the first time South American players, European players, and that's when I was like, oh shit, I'm actually not that good. So I got better, but never really played a super high level, and fell into coaching by my junior college coach. Went on vacation. He's like, hey, can you fill in for me while I'm out? Just feed some balls and just, you know, don't fuck up basically. So luckily I didn't, and that kind of got me an in at one tennis club. So when summer camps came around, they're like, hey, you know, you're capable. We'll have you in. And I kind of started like that, basically, kind of working my way up, working for different, you know, it went from high performance academy to just summer camps to now I'm mainly teaching just adults. I was folding towels at the front desk of a tennis club trying to get in before. I've kind of done a lot to try to get kind of to where I am now, and somehow I did it. I don't know how, and now I've got this Instagram that kind of feeds into that. So it's been quite a ride actually.
Yeah, and it's a great that you're doing different content on Instagram, because there's so much coaching content, and I do talk to a lot of online coaches, all great coaches, but it's like it can be a bit saturated. So it's nice to have a bit different take on. I mean, you can still do a different take on tennis, for example, and still find maybe also other angles of the coaching, depending on who you coach. For example, do you coach like a lot of rec players, like different ages, or is it kids, or what's your common day kind of?
Yeah, a normal day is you. I do have a few juniors that I think can be pretty good. But mainly it's like my day to day is like recreational adults. It used to be, like I said, you know, full day, like those academies where basically room and board is provided, homeschooling, all of that. But now and actually I kind of find that I enjoy teaching adult beginners a lot more. Because I can actually see a difference. I have these groups. It's called Tennis 101. It's like a program I run at my club. It's like a 4 week session, and it's so great to be able to see like from week one a progression to week four of like, hey, we're rallying, we're hitting with topspin, and I can really see sort of a difference that I've made. So day to day, it's usually like in the mornings. Like I said, no lessons this morning. It's a holiday here. Like moms, basically. I have a group called the Tennis Moms, actually. So I'm kind of like helping them come along. Like I started. This is like my third sort of group of beginners, my third iteration of it. I've had other two that went from complete beginners to now they're playing in leagues and competing, doing tournaments, which is really cool to see. But yeah, like I said, I kind of have everything across the board, and now I'm luckily in a position to where I'm basically working for myself, so I can kind of pick and choose what lessons I take. Because I've had a lot of situations where I'm working for someone else, and they just say, "Hey, here's a lesson you have to do," and those can be really long hours, basically.
Yeah, I think the tough part for a coach is when you have these, and I have several friends that, I mean, one recently quit, like when they're doing like 8, 9, 10 hour days, and it's just lesson after lesson after lesson. And obviously, you're not going to be able to give your all to a student or feel good about it. And also your body is gonna, even if you're just feeding balls for most of the part, it's gonna, your body's gonna feel that, like standing on that, like concrete or hard court for so many hours. So I think that makes a lot of sense that you can give more quality instead of quantity, you know.
Yeah, and I can see a noticeable difference. Because another thing with sometimes coaching like kids, especially if it's like recreational juniors, sometimes they don't want to be there. It's the situation where the parent is like, either really trying to force them into it or is like, hey, here's just something to do after school. And those are tough. Those are really, really tough. And like I said, I've done that for years. I used to work like up until like when I started taking my social media page a little bit more seriously. I was doing what I'm doing now on top of working for a junior program in the afternoon, which is great because it's good hours. It's basically I show up, I don't have to hustle for lessons. It's, the group is there. I just have to teach it and do a good job. But then you're kind of stuck on the court for, 15, 20 hours a week at least on top of whatever I'm doing for my adults at the club. And then I'm trying to make content for my page. And it's just, it got to be a bit too much to where
Yeah,
I
I can imagine
decided,
that.
yeah, I had to choose. All right, I'm either doing juniors or I'm doing adults. And I went the way of adults. And actually, I love it. It used to be intimidating coming from coaching only juniors where you can kind of be kind of silly and ah ha ha, like laugh around and just have a good time. But once you kind of find your voice as a coach, like it's so much more beneficial. I find teaching adults, just the connections you can make, just in general, just like business or life. It's been great.
Do you feel like you get a better kind of response in terms of gratitude from the adults? I mean, partly they're easier, obviously, for them to voice their feedback to you, whether it's positive or maybe negative or something they struggle with, than juniors who are kind of growing into their own bodies.
100%. Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Because sometimes when you're teaching adults, it's almost like a tough conversation of like, all right, like it's just you need to get stronger physically, or you're just, you're too slow, or you don't move well enough, and that's you have to have a sort of a bedside manner. With a junior, the potential is almost limitless, basically, because they're so, limber and flexible, and sometimes very quick in receiving like a technical like adjustment where it just happens immediately, and that's normally doesn't happen with an adult. But when it comes to kind of the back and forth communication, of course, an adult, like they know how to communicate that a little bit better, whether they like it or not. Because like you said, sometimes they don't like it, and it's like, okay, you know what? Sorry, if this doesn't work for you, it's okay.
How do you deal with that when you have someone who's kind of being very counter to what you're trying to advise or trying to change?
Yeah, I get that quite a bit actually. You just kind of have to get used to it, and what I the circumstance usually is it'll be a club player, someone that's in a league, and it's interesting because to me, growing up, tennis was kind of like I said, first it was just playing at the park, and then it became sort of competitive tournaments, and I didn't realize that there was a whole world of sort of social tennis where technique isn't perfect. There's all sorts of weird things. Backhand volley looks like this. And so when I got at my club, there's always league matches going on, and I would have these people come and I would simulate double scenarios, typical tactical things, and they would tell me like, that's not what happens. That's not how it goes. And it's like, really? And so I started to watch, and it's crazy, like the technical things that they're doing and how they play. So I'll get them on court and be like, hey, your forehand, you need a unit turn, needs to go like this. And they're like, yeah, that's not what I want to do. And it's like, oh, okay. And like, so a lot of it, the feedback is just kind of like, yeah, I'm not, you can't change my grip. This is just what it is. And then it's kind of a little bit of a back and forth where I usually I just kind of put it this way. I said, hey, like, think of it as floor and ceiling. Like, this is your floor and this is your ceiling. Now, if you make this adjustment, maybe the floor is the same, but the ceiling is a little bit higher. If you can start to, serve properly in a continental grip, find a trophy pose, make a proper loop on your forehand unit turn. So yeah, it's actually fairly common. I mean, I wouldn't say they're regular students because they'll usually come for one and be like, hey, can you take a look at my game and let me know what I can work on? And then usually it kind of goes nowhere from there unless somebody's like really serious about it. And I have clients like that too, where it's like, okay, you know what? We're going to do this for 8 weeks or something, and we're going to work on it and then kind of reassess from there. And but that takes a whole different mentality and mindset actually, because it's you fail so much before you start to see any type of reward, and that can be difficult.
Yeah, and I can see probably is why it's also nicer to work with beginners because tennis is such a difficult sport, right? So then you can mold something from the start and you can avoid some of these bad habits that we all have, but with some players are really deeply ingrained and that's why they don't want to change. Like for example, if you're 50 or 60 or even 70, maybe you're stuck with your continental forehand, it feels so difficult to change it. It's like learning a new language. While maybe it's not as bad in reality, but it feels that way, and then you kind of your whole like group of muscle will start, refusing to do anything, and then your head says no. So I can understand why beginners is a little bit better in that sense,
I
right?
love it. Yeah, yeah, because a lot of these players they have weekly matches in leagues and they don't want to try the new forehand because oh man, I don't want to lose, and it's it's kind of difficult. Like I get it, like you said, I get a lot of like, hey, no thank you, or that's not going to work for me, and I kind of, it's not personal. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to help you, and that's okay if you don't, if you're not open to it, it's fine. You're not to be rude, but it's like you're not going to improve like this, but maybe you're not going to get any worse. So if you're comfortable with that, then that's okay.
What are the most typical issues you see from rec players? Is it all over the place, or there's something that you kind of encounter over and over again that you almost want to create like a video here? Watch this, and then we'll talk after that 5 minutes later.
I really should. And kind of how you mentioned, there's the market is so saturated with, tennis coaches on court doing like, with the big X, don't do this, and like that's stuff that I never really see myself doing, but I do kind of want to make a video just internally for some members and be like, hey, these are sort of like the foundational things that I think we all need. A lot of it is the forehand where it just drops. It just goes straight down. There's no arc. It's a ton of that into like a sort of continental Eastern type of grip where they're just kind of muscling it. That is huge. And then mainly the serve. It's just the waiter's tray, palm up, and we're just kind of pushing it. And I mean, it's really interesting because I see all sorts of crazy things that somehow it's not supposed to work, but it kind of works. And people find these wild ways to make decent shots actually, but it's just like it seems so difficult to repeat it again and again, and like it's just inefficient. But I would say the main things is service, waiter's tray, and then just lack of a proper unit turn and different grips and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And do you see any kind of common injuries like that? Like, is tennis elbow pretty frequent still, or is it like you're not seeing that so much?
Um, there's tennis elbow, and also I think at my club it's kind of an older crowd, so you see a lot of knee braces and stuff like that, and like the arm sleeves. If that does anything, I don't know. And actually, this is pertinent to you. Like I see a lot of people using, in my opinion, like the wrong rackets. I see so many RF97s, and it's like I wouldn't even use that. I'm like I don't even consider myself good enough to use that. That's like insane. Like what is a 3-5 player doing with an RF97? And that's also a very common thing where it's like, hey, I think that's kind of holding you back a little bit.
I find that really difficult to talk to people about, like, because I do a lot of consultations with people from all levels, like from pros to beginners. And when people find, like, I mean, the diehard fans in tennis are like Fed, Rafa, and Novak. Those are the three. Like, if you give some shit to one of these icons, even like the slightest, smallest critique or comment, these people will come after you. It's kind of the social media, how social media works. And I'm a fan of all three in many ways. They're all amazing athletes, and I was a big fan of Federer, obviously, when I got back into tennis. And but I must say, like, he has probably hurt more players than he has helped them. He has inspired people to play tennis, but he has, in a way, inadvertently, not on purpose, like forced people to play worse tennis because it's all like super aggressive, no thinking, just going for your shot, playing with the RF97 or even a Pro Staff 97, which is pretty heavy for most rec players. And it's just like making them probably play too aggressively and make too many errors. And that's something I see. And I guess, is that something you see as well over there?
100%. Yeah, like I said, the blacked out RF97 was like
It's a beautiful racket though. Yeah.
it's the best. Yeah, but it was like, man, you shouldn't be using that. Like, A lot of Babolat's, which stiff rackets. Not to throw any shade, but like I think some players are, if you're a recreational player, why are you using RPM blast and a pure drive strung at 55? It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's part of what I'll do too. Something where even if somebody comes and they don't want to change their technique, which because I've actually been a fan of your YouTube and your page for quite a while now, so I've kind of learned a lot from you.
Oh, thanks.
And so I'll kind of take your racket consultation and pass it on to them and be like, hey, you should try something different. Try a softer racket, try a looser tension or something like that. And so I try to help however I can. But yeah, a bit of it is just kind of, and I think a lot of it too is like the older people, the technology was, I wouldn't know, but like was different. And so they learned tennis differently. And I think that's where just the drop comes from and the grips comes from. But yeah, just a lot of unnecessary choices, I would say, on the tennis courts. But I mean, they're still out there playing and like seeking advice, like trying to get better, even if they're not willing to make a change immediately. And that's a really cool thing. But like as you said, it is a lot easier to start molding a beginner from the beginning. But it is kind of difficult too because you have to teach your students to be patient with themselves because it's not, I've never played pickleball, but it's not like pickleball where you can get on a court and just figure it out in 15, 20 minutes and actually have fun. Like for my tennis 101s, I tell them on day one, I said, hey, like we might not be able to actually play or rally until like week 3. So like just, be patient with yourself. It's going to take time, but once you get that reward of being able to rally and hit, like I think you'll be interested in the sport then.
I think that's a big benefit of tennis. That's my personal opinion, is that like compared to pickleball, it takes a little bit of time, but the level of, I mean, the feeling of getting there is also a benefit. Like I mean, hard things are valuable, right? So even if something is very difficult, whether you're running marathons, learning tennis, or, learning a new language, whatever, the benefit of just getting to that end point or even the journey there is quite good. So going for the easy way out, which sometimes, I mean, pickleball or fast food, whatever you want to call it, is not always the best idea,
100%. No, that's a good way to put it. You hit on something I wanted to ask. So like I get some people intermediate level that want to use like the new Prestige. And they're like, I want to use a difficult racket so I can get my footwork right, so I can, so it's not because if I'm using a Clash or whatever, it's going to be too easy. And like, what do you say in a consultation to somebody like that, basically? Because I'll get that from time to time, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I guess I don't know.
I think, yeah, it's so personal. Like I've struggled with this question as well. It's so personal. Like if you're playing with the Prestige, you might think that it forces you to work harder, which is good. Ideally, you should work as hard with the Clash and just make sure you prepare the racket earlier. Because I think the problem people have in general is that they don't, they're not prepared with the racket, so they will hit too flat, and the ball will fly out. So they feel like they lack control, but it's really that they're not preparing properly, right? That's generally it, because topspin comes from the racket preparation and being there on time. And we all do this from time to time, but it's one of the most common things I see is that they're late. So the racket is then blamed for the lack of control, when it could actually help them so much if they just learn to just add that little bit extra of topspin. I think sometimes the low powered Prestige, even if it feels great, might lead to worse habits because they're going to keep hitting the ball flat, because now they have control also on these flat cannon shots or whatever, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. I feel like it's better in technically, although it's a difficult question, to just try to focus more on like, how can I control the power of this racket? Where do I go from there? Like, or the launch angle being a little bit higher. How can I control that? I think they're going to see quicker improvements and be better players from doing that. On the other hand, the other answer is that whatever makes you happy and feels good. Because I understand some people, like I played this tournament this week, right? And I played a guy in the semifinals. It was an open tournament, so there were some good players. It's a mixed level. And there was a coach from the Netherlands, and he loves old prestiges. He had like PT57A, which is like the, goat racket, whatever. And he played it with a multi-filament string, like head rip control. Making a video about that tonight, actually, when we're talking. And the thing is, like, it works for his game. He has old school game. He plays old school. He plays nice tennis, serve and volley, good feel, and that's how he enjoys tennis. He doesn't want to play with a modern racket. His son plays with a modern racket, but he doesn't want to do it. So it also what makes you smile and have fun on the tennis court. But I think you really need to understand that the problem with most modern rackets is that they don't handle them properly. It's like they still swing with the wrong mechanic, and that's something you can usually work on. So maybe the answer is somewhere in between, or it's just, yeah, whatever makes you happy, I guess. But that's my thinking around it, because it's a complicated issue, because there's so many personal journeys in tennis.
Right, right. No, that's good. You made the semis of an open. That you're playing good, man.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that super strong, but I'm playing more and more tournaments, at least. So I have an ITF Seniors, coming this week, and my foot is really fucked up, so I'm trying to rehab it. We'll see. I'm
Oh
going to the
no.
physio tomorrow. Classic.
Oh no.
Getting older, I guess. Or no, I mean, injuries come for everyone, right? But
Same, man. I had wrist surgery in February, and that kind of really
well,
set me back and kind of almost gave my career sort of a left turn, basically, where it's almost like, oh wow, maybe I can't do this forever. I shouldn't put all my eggs in this one basket, basically, which has led into me taking my Instagram and social media more seriously. But the injuries come for you, and it's kind of like you just got to be ready, I guess.
yeah, of course. What happened to the wrist? Was it like a tennis thing that kind of built up, or?
It had to be like I was teaching a lesson and kind of like a hitting lesson type of thing, and I was on the ad side, I was running to the deuce court, running forehand, slapped it, was late, and like there was a popping. It didn't really hurt. It didn't feel that different than just being late on any forehand, but little by little it just kind of got worse and more uncomfortable, and to the point that was like in September, to the point where like in November I was in a brace when they're like, oh, you probably sprained it. Didn't improve. I actually started playing left-handed just so I could still stay on the court and just kind of do my thing. And then they were like, no, you need surgery. It was like my ligaments were all splayed out and they needed to cut it and reattach and reorganize everything. So yeah, I was out for probably the majority of part of this year, which was not very fun. It was the first time, because basically since when I started, when I was like 11 to that point, I never stopped playing. And I know that's a common thing for people after college or after trying to play tournaments. They take a break and then they come back. So luckily I never stopped, but this was the first time in my life that I was not playing at all, and it was kind of difficult mentally, to be honest. That, and then on top of it's like, oh wow, well, I'm not able to do my job anymore. So yeah, but luckily there's still a few times where I'll hit a ball and it'll be so I gotta be careful about like my racket and string setup to try to protect it a little bit. Um, but yeah, it was tennis thing, and hopefully I never have to go through it again.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, people don't sometimes maybe realize the overuse you put on the body, especially, I mean, if you're coach, even if you're not hitting every lesson super hard, but even as a player, like I play 5, 6 times a week, I mean, five maybe, but it's been a lot of tennis last few years because of Tennis Nerd. So it's like my job and I'm playing all the time, and testing new strings, new rackets, new everything. So you obviously have to really warm up. I really put a lot of effort into my warm up, which I didn't do before. Like gym, doing like stretching in the morning, trying to take some care, because this can happen at any time. Happened to a friend of mine recently as well, the wrist, especially depending on your technique. I guess if you have a bit of a wristier shot, which can be very nice for the kind of rotations on the ball it can generate, but it can also put so much more strain on the wrist, right? So it's a tough one. So it's also like almost like what happened during. I mean, it's a weird relationship, but it's like in COVID, we all had to think about what happens now. Like, what am I going to do with my life if I can't go back to playing tennis or go back to whatever you were doing? And you had that with your injury here. You're like, and like Dominic Thiem, for example, also with a wrist injury. When you're in that kind of dark hole of like, now my life is changing, maybe. Or do I just have to be patient? Like, how did you cope with that? How did you deal with it? Like, how was the best and the worst moments from that period?
Man, there was, I mean, and on top of that, like at least here in Southern California, it was like the rainiest winter we had in so long. So it was like I'm just sitting on the couch. Like, so when I had the surgery, I didn't really know. I guess I didn't ask enough questions, basically. But like, I was kind of like, she said, "Oh, it's gonna be a small thing. We're just gonna, open you up here and do this or whatever." And I woke up and I had like a cast to here, and I was like, "What happened?" Like, um, and so yeah, I was just sitting on the couch with this big cast, and it's like raining for days outside, and it was kind of depressing, but I mean, luckily, actually, the San Diego Open came. I live in Orange County, so San Diego's about an hour away. San Diego Open came through that November. It was last year, so and the turnout was fantastic. I think it coincided with the WTA finals being in Dallas, so like 8 of the top 10 were there. So I kind of that was a nice, probably a high point. I got to just the tickets were super cheap, so I got to sit courtside and just kind of watch all these, WTA players, Iga and Sabalenka. It was fun. Um, Dark time was just kind of rehab stuff. Like you're just doing. I felt like I was just doing the same thing again and again and again, and just I don't know. I feel like I'm a fairly positive guy. I try to find the sense of humor in things, so it wasn't that dark, but it just got repetitive, just kind of doing the same things again and again. And luckily, like around, I would say post Indian Wells, so like at the end of March, in April, I was able to kind of get back onto the court. And like I said, I before my surgery, I realized I was able to play left-handed, which is something I wished I would have known like from the beginning, basically. Not great, but I mean, I could sustain a rally and play matches and stuff, and actually like play proper tennis. So there was a little bit of a comfort area of like coming back of like, okay, if the wrist isn't exactly ready, I can just play lefty. And so that's kind of how I managed it. Just trying to see the humor in things, even though it was a bit of a bummer, but luckily it was kind of a temporary thing.
Yeah, I mean that's good. That's good. And also, I mean, being having a positive disposition, I think always helps. Like in any kind of situation where you're tested, we're all tested at times in our life, and we need to just stay a little bit strong and happy. And the way if you look at things in a more comedic light, in a way, it usually helps. You're like just like, okay, I am here where I am. I just have to deal with it from now on. So how are you able to
Exactly.
play lefty? That's my left hand. It can't do shit. It's like a useless thing hanging. It feels like I can play guitar pretty well,
Nice.
but that's about that. But tennis would be tough left hand. I do one-handed backhand, which is still not good. But still, like I'm not very good with the double hander. So you play double handed as well, and then you're
I
quite
played,
serious with the lefty.
yeah, I played lefty forehand, two-hand backhand. I mean, it honestly, and this is a great exercise just for anyone. Like, my wife sort of plays, she's a beginner. I just ask her, hey, can you come out? And we would do mini tennis for like an hour of just trying to get down like my lefty forehand cross court and then the other way. And like, I know some members at my club, they're like, oh, fuck mini tennis. I hate it. It's so boring. But it's actually like a really good exercise. So, I started just with that, and then once I kind of started seeing the shape of the ball, I was like, you know what? I think I could do this. And then ball machine at the club and just repetitions, and I had nothing but time, basically. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure how. I wish I would know. Like I said, I wish I would have known years ago. But yeah, it's sort of a nice novelty, I guess, because now I'm back playing right-handed, of course. But once in a while, like if I'm running to my backhand, I might be able to hit a lefty a lefty passing shot as someone comes forward. But yeah, that timeout helped because it kind of just opened my mind. Because before I was so, I guess, comfortable of saying like, okay, well, I'm a tennis coach, because it's something that I've worked for and I wanted to be for so many years, and I finally became like a club pro working for myself. And it's an amazing, it's a blessing really that I get to basically play tennis for a living. That's sort of a win for me, just in life. But once that was kind of like the possibility of that, maybe, hey, you can't do this anymore. It opened my mind to where like, okay, now I have to start looking at staying in the tennis industry, but maybe finding different avenues and different things to do. And luckily, I have this platform of balanced tennis that has kind of opened some doors for me. And that's kind of, I'm still coaching, but I'm also still kind of navigating, seeing what other opportunities and things that might be able to come my way.
So when you studied back in school, I thought about this for a while now, but I wanted to ask. But so you were in the creative mindset, the creative, maybe you wanted to be like a writer, or what was your kind of goal when you were in school?
I wasn't sure. I was fascinated at like storytelling basically because ever since I was so when I was a kid, like I would watch probably movies that I shouldn't have been watching, but these fantastic movies, Goodfellas and A Clockwork Orange and these like really wild movies that are like they really made you, for example, like A Clockwork Orange. It's like, have you seen it?
Yeah, of course, man.
Okay, so it's like this is a terrible person, but like why am I like kind of rooting for him in a way? Like and that's like a really interesting thing that like kind of caught my mind like when I was younger and trying to understand how did how did the writer and director make me feel this way basically. So I just wanted to learn everything that I could basically about filmmaking. So at the junior college where I was at, it had like a great program to where I learned how to edit and we went through Joseph Campbell's like books and just learning the character arcs and stuff like that. And there wasn't really a particular goal in a sense of like, oh, I want to do this. It was just satisfying a curiosity basic of like how does this work? And luckily I was able to learn what I could. I did have an opportunity. I was going to go to NYU and play tennis. That was kind of set up, but then they weren't going to help me because it's like Division 3. There was no proper scholarship or anything like that, and it was expensive, and I just didn't go. Basically, I ended up staying, helping with my mom's family business and starting to kind of find my way in as a coach. So I never exactly pursued that all the way. I don't know where that could have gone, not sure, but it was more of a satisfying a curiosity more than anything. And in a way, I mean, back then I guess Facebook existed and like Instagram wasn't what it is, but now when I'm kind of making the stuff that I'm making, it helps so much to be familiar with editing and timing and tempo, and so it kind of became very useful, but it's not at all how I thought I would be using these skills that I learned.
Well, that's funny how life works, right? Because I studied journalism in Washington, D.C. I worked there as a journalist, like as an intern for in the White House, and I was like not figuring out exactly. It was a cool experience, like not figuring out exactly how this would, be in my life, or if I would stay like that forever. And now I do my own editing of the videos and stuff with Tennis Nerd and stuff. And then you can use, I mean, I was only editing audio because it was like talk radio news. So we were doing like mainly audio bits and stuff. And that was like MP3. So this was ages ago, right? And then you learned editing software, even if it was audio. And then I could use that for music because music is my hobby. And also now because Final Cut and stuff is much easier when you know like how timelines work and how this type like and with clips. And I'm still not even close to good at it, but at least you have the basics to start with, right? So
Right, and
that's good.
getting better. Dude, I would say like from watching your old stuff to now, it's like you got better. Like it's awesome. It's part of the process, right? Like and it's
Yeah,
I'm not saying
thanks.
it was bad before, but you were figuring it out, right? Just same as me basically.
Yeah, you can go like there's interesting routes to go. Like, but, I mean, some people they if they have the money to do it, like you can go and hire one. I kind of like learning it. So even though it's painful for me and also for my viewers or listeners or whatever, I prefer just going through the process of improving it and instead of getting someone, can you help me do this? Because then I'm not learning it. So I'm not now I feel like at least I know the basics of it. I'm not gonna be like Carl Tennis or someone like that, but at least you know a little bit. Yeah, exactly. He's very good. How to tell the story, so and what to include and not to include, and be pretty harsh. Like what in journalism school, I there was one thing that was really strong. It's like this kill your darlings. Like be able to. We had this old textbook. Maybe you did in your university as well. Like with like Strunk, I think there was Strunk and someone else. It's just like a very
Yeah,
thin
audio's
book.
shrunk and white. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Everybody had to do that. It's like you kill your darlings, be super strict with every single word. And I'm a talker, so I'm not always strict with words, as people can tell me. But when I write, I try to keep it a little bit more, to the minimum if I can. And I do edit away a lot in my videos, which people maybe not know because it's a bit blubby blubby. But still, I do edit it a lot.
No, for sure. No, and I think part of that process is, I'm sure there's a lot of people like me that have been following along for a while where you can see the improvement. People like, especially me, like I root for that. I'm like, hey, like you're when you started inviting people on like the show, it's like, hey, that's cool. That's a great idea. Like, so yeah, kind of the audience kind of in a way grows with you. So same way. I mean this. So after I started getting credentials and stuff for tournaments, I was like, I need a website. So I don't know anything about how to do that, but like I'm figuring it out basically. I mean, nothing too technical, drag and drop type of stuff, but just like same thing basically. It's like, you know what, because I had friends like just hire someone to do it, and it's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I could, but I want to be able to at least take my shot at it, and then if it sucks, okay, then maybe I'll get some help.
Yeah, and also I think it's like it's part of the fun, right? It's like, I think the process is part of the fun with everything. I mean, even like my own tennis, or it's like it's fun to work on something. Sometimes it feels like shit and you want to quit, but that's also a part of your improvement process, right? So you have to go through it. And when you get to a point where you feel like you improved, even if it's 1%, you feel much better, whatever it is, right? You feel like, oh, I actually improved a little bit. I'm better at this now than I was, a year ago or 6 months ago, whatever.
Right. And you're I think you said you're kind of self-taught, right? You kind of
Yeah.
figured it out though. That's so cool. YouTube self-taught, or like just watching matches and just getting out and tinkering and figuring it out like
I did do tennis in when I was like 6 to 8 or something, very very young, and then I quit for many years. I played chess, and I started playing again like in my 20s. So it was like a kind of that, and then I started getting into. I took actually some lessons then, but then it's been right like a process of just learning to play properly. But like the tennis obsession helps because I was a little bit tennis obsessed when I was younger. I don't know why I fell away. Sometimes you just don't have time, or you're doing other shit. I was guitar and chess was kind of my things that took my time. So and running. I was a big runner. That's why I ruined my knees for tennis a little bit. But now I'm feeling good, and I'm trying to improve a little bit all the time. With the tennis and stuff. But obviously, I think for people, this is something I talk about. Maybe you've noticed that as well with your students. Is that if you get into something late, obviously there's a big journey that has to happen, especially something that's technical as tennis, even guitar. Like I have some friends who are ex-pros who started guitar very late, and then it's a hassle obviously to learn something late. So it's a big benefit to start when you're a kid. But on the other hand, the love for the thing you're doing is probably stronger because you have more appreciation when you're older. So you feel like, oh, I love this so much. I love doing it. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or intermediate, whatever. And I feel like that's the way sometimes with tennis. If people have played it since they were kids, maybe they're not as much in love with it, as if they are like older beginners, for example.
Right. 100%. And this is something I was talking about with a friend. It's like to learn tennis as an adult, or I guess this applies to any super technical, difficult thing. Is like you have to be kind of a sicko in a way, because you're gonna fail so much and it's gonna
Yeah.
suck. But like this is kind of cliche, but if you kind of fall in love with the process, it becomes not easy, but it's easier to accept these things, and you just kind of flow through it, and then you fall in love with it. I can see actually the other day I was in the pro shop, talking to the court desk, and they're like, "Hey, how was your lesson?" And I'm like, "You know what? Like with this group, they're starting." I sounded like a drug dealer, but it's like I can see it. They're starting to get addicted. We were actually able to rally, and like they're having fun, and like so yeah, you can as a coach, I can start to notice when players hit that mark of like that group. I didn't teach them last week, but they were out on a court on their own. And that's so good to see, where it's like, hey, and I tell students that it's like, hey, I love to facilitate your tennis. Obviously, it helps me make a living, but you have to go out and do this on your own. Like I can't be the only person to facilitate your tennis. And so anyways, you can as a coach, you can see that process, and it's very, very fulfilling.
I think that's huge. Like when you see the smile on their face, like I did this with my mother, for example. She's a beginner. My stepfather, he's a pretty decent player for his age, like 65. But she started and they started playing together. And he's not the best technical coach, so I had to come in a little bit and say, okay, use this equipment, and then maybe you have to start learning how to hit some balls with topspin, and learn, move more than your husband because he's not moving. And when you start seeing the rallies back and forth, and there's ability to hit with some spin and control, it's just like so addictive. You know it yourself. The feeling when you get to that point. I mean, it takes longer in tennis than in pickleball, for example, or even paddle. But when you get there, it's like, you're hooked. Most of the
Exactly.
time, you're hooked. You're gonna be playing this sport maybe for the rest of your life. So it's a beautiful experience, right?
It really is.
In Newport, like, and in the US in general, like there's now pickleball wars. I don't want to really get into that too much, but it's interesting like how US has become kind of a country that's very easily polarized with the politics, with everything. It's nuts,
Everything.
right? sadly. 20 years ago, I lived there, so it wasn't as like that back then, in
Yeah,
my
you were in
opinion.
the belly of the beast, DC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a bit like lighter in that terms of the polarization. I think it's maybe, heavily influenced many ways by social media and all that stuff. But you have pickleball. It's great that people are moving, even if it's slight movement on the rise. And when I talk to tennis coaches, it's a thing that's there. Like we don't feel it so much in Europe. We have paddle and tennis, but they seem to coexist a bit better. There are no like paddle and tennis wars as far as I'm aware. In Europe, it's like, okay, you play paddle, we play tennis. It's fine. We can have a chat afterwards. While pickleball seems to create frustration among tennis players because of courts and whatnot, and vice versa. So, how's your situation where you are? And is tennis doing fine still?
Um, so at my club, luckily, basically, we're like the club is right in the middle of this neighborhood, so pickleball would never be allowed in the sense because it's too loud.
Yeah.
So and also our club is not really looking to, well, first of all, it would never happen for the noise, but also it's just they're not going to invest any money in changing anything. There is so in Newport Beach, there's three tennis clubs within like 3 miles, basically super close. So one of the clubs basically converted into one of the biggest pickleball facilities, I would say, in Southern California. They have like proper tournaments and events. They built like a stadium. And like when it comes to the wars, I know I'll make some memes and content. And to be honest, it's low hanging fruit. I know basically if I post something about pickleball, it's a slow day. It's kind of like I didn't have any other ideas, or I find some antagonistic video and I just find something clever to say about pickleball. But like in reality, it doesn't bother me that much. It's kind of like, hey, if you want to go out and play something that's easy to play with your family or easy to learn, like why not? Like go ahead and do that. The public courts, there's so many, at least in Orange County, there's so many public tennis courts that are just available to where I don't see it really as a big issue. I know in other places where, tennis courts aren't readily available, or like, if you're living in a part of the country where the weather isn't as nice and you have to kind of share indoor spaces, I know that can be a thing. But for me personally, it's whatever. I mean, it's if that's what you want to play, more power to it. As people that take it seriously, I don't know, it's like, in my opinion, it's like if I wouldn't take mini golf seriously, as a profession type of thing. But no, when it comes to the wars, I've never seen it. I mean, I used to work on these public courts when I first started teaching, and I went, recently down over there, and it's all pickleball now. I'm like, oh wow, okay, well, I guess that's what people are talking about being mad. I mean, it's not completely converted, just the lines are on the court, and it looks weird, but I don't know. I think it's all right.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy opinion. I try to have that as well. Like there's no point in, I mean, you can't do anything, even if it's a trend that's gonna go away. I mean, it's not gonna go away, but it's gonna maybe decrease, Because in Sweden we've had this, like where I grew up, like it's you see people fall into trends. Now everybody's playing online poker. Now everybody's doing this. Now everybody's into this video game. Now everybody's into this, and it's like it lasts a year approx, or a little bit longer. Happened with paddle, for example. Everybody plays paddle. Now we're investing millions and millions into paddle courts everywhere. And the last year or so, they overdid it. Like paddle is still a popular hobby, or but it's overdone. So there's too many now. There are too many centers, too many courts, because where money goes, there's gonna happen stuff, and people wanted to invest and make a living out of that. And I have friends who are invested in paddle centers, and now they need to close some of them, or convert them into something else. And that's just how it is. Like if things go too fast, you have to change. And that might happen with pickleball as well. I have a feeling like, okay, now it's not in to play pickleball. Now we play something else. Something else is more
Right.
popular.
The interesting thing that I'd like to keep track of is like, because I don't know if it's been on your radar, but there's like leagues now where there's all like basketball players and tennis players have made investment in teams, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, I see the chat, like I'm online a lot, in the chatters like, oh, pickleball is the next NFT craze, basically, where people are just dumping money in this and you don't know what's going to happen. That'll be interesting. I don't know where that goes, because I feel you with that, of like trends and phases, because that's like everything with like fashion, sneakers, or whatever,
Yeah.
or like hobbies. But yeah, I don't know where that money goes, and it would be nice if some of that money would be invested in tennis. But I don't know, for whatever reason, people are jumping on board of that, and I guess we'll see where it goes. I don't, have you ever watched it on like TV or anything like that or on YouTube?
Yeah, I have. I've played it. About, I even played a tournament, right?
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in Malta, like local open. I mean, my friend played for a while. He's a slightly overweight alcoholic, so I had to join. Uh, sorry. But no, it's like so. I wanted to join his doubles, and it was fun. Like, we're very good friends, and I wanted to kind of be a part of it and try it. I don't mind it at all. So we played a bit, but it's not even close to the same enjoyment I get of tennis. But I mean, I singles I can find some enjoyment in. I do find this kitchen rule very silly, and partly the name is very silly. But it's like that. There are a few things that kind of makes me feel like, okay, we're playing a hobby here. This is a hobby sport. Like there are other real sports. That's just my feeling. So when I watched it on TV, that feeling doesn't go away, right? I still feel like this is not good enough to be a sport. Like it's not physically demanding enough. I gotta get some angry pickleballers here, but and I mean, it's not skill based enough, in my opinion, to make it feel like a sport. And that's maybe becomes like an easy transition life for guys like Jack Sock or people like Sam Querrey who then like, oh, I can be a pickleball star now because I'm not doing well in tennis, because tennis is damn difficult to even make a living from, like to even play well. So then their transition from that to a pickleball star is pretty fast, and it's not very enjoyable for me to watch. I wouldn't watch it.
That's why, yeah, I was like, all right, I'm usually very open-minded about everything, and I got on YouTube and I was like, all right, let's see the US Open or whatever it is, and I was just kind of like, sorry, sorry, I'm not gonna watch any more of this, but I don't know, we'll see where it goes. It is, I mean, when I was in, it was interesting when I was in Guadalajara, they announced Jeannie Bouchard on a pickleball, whatever, but then she was there playing tennis in Guadalajara, and I kind of wanted to ask, like, so what, are you gonna do both, or what's happening? But I didn't get a chance to ask.
I guess like they put money. I mean, she's a name in this terms of like she built a pretty good personal brand when she was doing well in tennis. She's
Hmm.
good looking, and like that helps, of course. And then now they can obviously use that. And pickleball seems to have a lot of momentum and money, and that's what happens. So they throw money on tennis players, and tennis players have a hard time dodging money. It's like they obviously want to get
You
the
want to
money.
make
So
money, yeah.
yeah, so that's I guess what happens. But I think as a product, it's not super strong, really, honestly, and that's my opinion. And I know tennis is not maybe in the US doing as well as it can or as it has, because Agassi, Sampras, that whole era was huge. Now we have Coco Gauff playing really well on the women's side. Guys coming along now, Tommy Paul, Ben Shelton, Taylor Fritz, and so on. Are you watching any tennis? Or do you have time to watch some highlights or watch some matches when you're?
Yeah, post. So usually I'm watching everything as much as I can so I can stay up to date. I know my posts have been memes or whatever, but I like to stay informed just so I know what's going on. But post US Open, I haven't watched. So like I was at the tournament for San Diego Open. I was at the tournament for Guadalajara Open, and that's pretty much all the tennis that I've watched, just kind of in person. I know that now they're in Asia, and there was some good matches, but the time difference was a little bit too crazy for me. Like I saw Sinner and Alcaraz, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna watch that. And it was like at 2 in the morning, but I was like, okay, no, I need to sleep. So I haven't been watching. But what you said about American tennis, I was listening to Gil Gross yesterday, and somebody asked him a question about like what's the best tennis nation? Is it Italy? Is it, the United States? And like the stat was something like the US has 10 players in the top 100 or something, like basically where the numbers were a lot better than I thought when it comes to kind of like how you said it's not, I wouldn't say it's the most popular thing, not even close in the United States when it comes to sports. People love American football or the NBA or even baseball, but I mean, I wouldn't say all respect to Taylor Fritz, but I don't, we're lacking the one guy where it's like, okay, that's our star. I mean, Ben Shelton, maybe, even though his ranking is still, we don't know what he's going to be, but he has those type of qualities basically where there's personality, or even Tiafo is now in the top 10. But yeah, I think the state of American tennis is pretty good when it comes to just the sheer numbers of players that are playing well. When it comes to the popularity of the sport, like when I went to Indian Wells, it was the busiest I'm talking about this last year, it was the busiest I had ever seen it, basically, in the past 3, 4 years. A little bit of that might be the COVID rules and the restrictions, but I think a big help was the Netflix doc, because there was like so much support for the players that were on that series. Like, for example, I know Ons Jabeur was popular before, but like just people screaming, losing their mind in the main stadium, just oh my God, Ons Jabeur, or even just the fangirls following around Matteo Berrettini, which is, I mean, he's always had that, but it was different, I would say, after the Netflix series. So there was good showing for that. The U.S. Open was really great. I was there for the fan week and the first couple of days of the tournament, and it was as expensive as it was, which was ridiculous. It was packed. I think they set a couple of records this year for attendance, so that was good compared to San Diego Open, which I like that tournament. It's a very small venue. It's basically like at a tennis club. The turnout was so-so, but I guess that's kind of to be expected to not be like a marquee event, even though it was a 500. Um, but I would say it's in a decent place. I don't think it's like in a terrible place. But one thing that I've kind of learned from my Instagram is like there's a lot of people that are pretty interested in tennis that you wouldn't expect to be like into tennis. Like people in the streetwear industry, people in just different avenues of life, rappers and stuff like this that are like, wow, you're like like at the San Diego Open, like what do like it's one thing to go to the US Open, but if you're, like if you're at a small event just to see the tennis, that's pretty cool. Um so it's in a decent spot, I would say. It could be better, and I don't know. I mean, there's some answers I would say to help build, more of an audience here that I think other sports in the US do a little bit better, because it's like so difficult to figure out. I get so many messages about like, "Hey, how do I watch this match?" And it's like, yeah, if it's on center, you need tennis TV. If it's on an outside court, tennis channel's fine. I don't know how you watch. Is it easier in Europe? Like, does one subscription get you covered?
No, I think it's still a bit tricky, but it's easier, I think, because I've heard from my American friends and followers, like it's t that tennis channel, even like they show like a lot of pickleball now, and then it seems like the coverage is quite spotty. You don't know, am I going to be able to watch this match? I see some frustration in the comments, about like I couldn't watch this match. I live of like tennis TV and Eurosport Player. Like Eurosport in the European region is pretty good. They cover, like even this year they usually cover the slams, and now they also got Wimbledon, which they didn't used to have the license for. So for us it's pretty decent. I have the slams are most important for me. That's what I watch unless I go live, because I really like watching live tennis. That's the best. Obviously everything live is the best, but it really is huge in tennis because you see the pace of the ball better, and the closer you get to the players, the more exciting it is, because you understand the movement, and if you're a player, you get so much more out of it. While watching on TV, sometimes it looks slower. It's like bird's eye view. The product is not packaged, in my opinion, the way it could be. It could be improved in so many ways to make it more engaging for the casual viewer. For a tennis fan might be fine, but we have to also look outside the tennis fans.
Yeah, there's a lot of just very casual, and that's something that because for a while my page was kind of just, I would say, average, milling around, between 1,000 to whatever 5,000. But since I've kind of gotten bigger, like I've realized like a lot of my followers are very, very casual. So it's kind of opened my mind a little bit of like, oh, okay, something that's pretty obvious is maybe not so obvious. Like you said, in live tennis, you can actually see the net clearance, the arc of the ball, the amount of spin, and that sadly doesn't translate the same on TV because it's that lifted view. And yeah, because I have this discussion a lot of times in my lessons, like, oh, I want to hit like, you know, Yannick Sinner is just laser, and it's like, yeah, but there's actually like a lot of spin. There's a ton of, it is fairly flat, but there's a lot of spin there. There's plenty of net clearance. So yeah, I agree. It could be packaged differently, and it is kind of a nightmare to be able to try to follow things. I know a lot of people have like sort of waging a war on the tennis channel because there was a really bad one where was it Cincinnati where Carlos played Novak in the final, and it was that great best of three match that went like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Cincinnati. Yeah.
so anyways, I don't know how. I think I was watching on Tennis TV, but 'cause I unsubscribed from Tennis Channel because it's just not good in my opinion. So anyways, apparently the match cut out like because the airtime hit its limit, and so like people didn't get to see like the last three games plus I think the tiebreak end of that match, and that was just like that's insane. Like how does something like that happen? So I don't know. Like I talk some shit on Instagram, like not too much, but like a little bit of that, and I kind of like anti tennis channel, and then I was able to get credentialed for some events and kind of get to see how they do their thing, and I was like, okay, you know what, they're good people, they're working hard clearly, but I think there's things to improve for sure.
Yeah, what do you think from a like a storytelling point of view, if we get back to kind of Breakpoint, do you think that was a good vehicle for people that are new to tennis, but also for people who are like you and me, like into tennis?
Yeah, I don't think it was for people like us for sure. Like, because a lot of it that they could have done better is just kind of, you don't have to explain what 15 love, 30 love is, but just like the way they would edit points and try to make, like, I can't remember the match, but they edited it in a way where it was like, oh my God, it's a break point, but it was like, yeah, the player was down two sets at Roland Garros. Like, this wasn't a tense, high leverage situation. It's not so, not for us, but for example, I think my wife, at least for me, is a good kind of viewpoint. She's casual, and she really liked it. She didn't know about Ons Jabeur, and she didn't know about Paulo Badosa and the mental health thing, and Maria Sakkari and her coach. So for something like that, I think it was pretty good for casual people just to get them in. There even I mean I would say for me there was some high marks. Like I was really interested in the Nick Kyrgios Wimbledon thing with Stefanos, because that was a big moment of that year. And like there's I feel like some things that they miss, but kind of like you said, you got to kill your darling, so don't know what's going on in the production, but I think it's good. It's kind of, for example, it does. I don't think it also works that it takes so long. For example, like some of the storylines that released, whatever it was, like 3 months ago when they dropped the second season or whatever it was. It's kind of like, yeah, for example, someone like Paula Badosa, it's like, you know what, when it comes to this year, she's been kind of not even playing, like not even, healthy enough to play. So it is kind of weird to feature that, or someone like Berrettini, because when that like when they aired it, he was in the second week of slams pretty commonly and was a top 10 player, and now just more injuries, and he's kind of not really in the mix. I would love to see him back in it, but um, I think it works, but also it could be better. How? I don't know. I didn't finish film school. I'm not sure, but for casual people, I think it's all right.
Yeah, I
It's
think it's
better than nothing.
definitely, yeah, definitely better than nothing, and definitely nice to see tennis get such a spotlight. Yeah, I saw the huge chess boom. Like, I used to play chess when I was younger, and on a kind of a semi-professional level, or trying, winning, junior opens and stuff like that. But uh, then chess was not popular enough, not easy to make enough money, and then you had like Queen's Gambit, COVID, streaming, online chess being huge, and now it's like a serious career. You could just be a streamer, or it could be like it's from e-game esports and stuff like that. So it just helped it a huge lot. So being on Netflix or some kind of streaming service is huge, because it reaches such a big population who's just like scrolling through and seeing it. So I really appreciate it. I mean, you can have your criticisms, which I completely 100% agree with all of them you said, and there's some things that maybe were a bit silly or not correct. And I definitely think you make a good point there. It's like today things need to be a little bit more relevant. So I think time is ticking fast. Like everything's getting faster. Social media is instant. You have news all the time. You can just be addicted to scrolling on your phone. So having like a whole lagging half a season, full season, one season and a half, it's not good, because like that player is now, and we see it in tennis especially, we can see it also in sports teams, for example. Like there are a few players who are like on a hot streak and very relevant, but then if you look at this year, we had Oger Aliassime. Like he's not done anything this year pretty much. Like it's pretty been a bad year for him. Stefanos started pretty well, but then it's been pretty bad. Tsitsipas, but also similar. Berrettini, few players that like, oh, going into the season, is this going to be a top 5, top 3, top 1 player? and
Exactly.
just like a horrible season, you know.
And I think, for example, someone like Ayla Tomljanovic, I think that was a great choice because it's like she's, you know, ranked high enough to get into the main draw of a Grand Slam, but also probably isn't ranked high enough to get into a WTA like 500 or something like that. So there was an opportunity to maybe follow her to smaller tournaments, challengers, or someone like I think you know Roman Safiulin or his coach or
Yeah,
something, right?
it's a buddy of mine. Yeah.
That would be a great player. I hope they're following. He's been playing great this year, actually, and he's someone that's, is used to playing on an outside court at a small tournament and then now has to show up and play at a Masters 1000 is kicking ass. So like stuff like that I think could be maybe a little bit to bring in people like us who, we don't know too much about that world unless we're personally connected to that player. I think that's kind of a missed opportunity because they had Isla, but they didn't really feature that too much at all.
Yeah, I think like from talking to so many people now, like Felix from Tennis Brothers last week, and it's like you could package things through social media so much better. So you actually, because low level tennis is interesting in the grind and in the like the lack of amazing facilities, and you're seeing the tough like journey from going to being a journeyman, as you used to call it, or journeywoman, and then going through the ranks. Like I mean, Roman, for example, is a good option here, and I would love to talk to him about it if he's up for it. And I'll talk to him when he's back in Marbella. But he's like goes from being outside top 100, not being in the main draws, just having amazing season, beat Zverev, giving him like 4 games, and reaching Wimbledon quarterfinals. Just been a dream season. And my friend, just his first year being like a coach on that level, just being part of that, right? So it's just been a very but that would have been a fun journey to document, for example, because you're seeing like everything with fresh eyes, like, oh, is this how it is to be in the Wimbledon club and the Wimbledon, it's like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in trying to find that story that is just like not maybe Cinderella, but it's like has an arch of some kind, and building that instead of maybe with Breakpoint, it was a little bit more like, okay, this is how glamorous tennis players' lives are. While it would be good also to show like how unglamorous some of the lower levels of tennis is.
100%. You know who's actually been doing, I don't know if it's on your radar, but Dasha Kazakina, her
Yeah.
girlfriend Natalia, those YouTube videos are like in some cases I learned more about the tournament than from that than on the Netflix doc because it's like when they featured Indian Wells, they made it seem like this super glamorous thing, which it kind of is. But, on the YouTube channel, they're talking about like, yeah, the player's food is like whatever, like, or stuff like that. And it's like, whoa, that's cool. Like, and I mean, it is a little bit glamorous because she's now, I think she's out of the top 10, but she's borderline top 10. But it's more of a, I don't want to say guerrilla style, filmmaking, but it's more realistic basically. And I find that something like that a lot more interesting. And there's a few other, I mean, God, what's her name? Taylor Fritz's girlfriend kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
Morgan Riddle, I think.
Right.
And like, I think those videos are more catered to somebody like my wife because a lot of it is like, oh, here's my skincare routine, and then here's a tennis tournament. But there's other alternative content that I think can help. And like, I'm gonna try to create something like that soon here for the next couple of tournaments that I'm gonna be fortunately able to go to, and kind of inspired by Kazakina's page because I'm like, oh, you know what? That's actually a really like a great idea and an interesting perspective on it.
Yeah, I like that. Like I like that it's raw. I always like that. That was kind of the part of the whole tennis nerd thing. It's like I like when it's not polished. It's not like CBS 60 minutes or whatever. When it's like it feels very formulaic, and all the questions seem, oh, we had to check this before, we did this before, and working in DC as well, like as a part of like following George W. Bush around in the caravan and stuff, like everything is very like prepared, and you had to do this and you had to check like the speech before and stuff like that. So when you're part of that big media scene, it's not very sexy in my opinion. Like it doesn't feel very authentic or original. You're just stuck in that kind of like loop. And the same with talk shows. There's always like, oh, we talk for 30 seconds and then there's a 3-minute commercial. You're like, okay, this is great. They don't get to any point of any depth or anything. It's just like feels like very made up everything.
Actually, your vlog was it the in I don't know where it was, the Boss Open Germany.
Yeah, in Stuttgart, yeah, in
Yeah,
Germany, I think maybe.
it's great. Like you covered the tournament basically. I've never been there, but I feel like I kind of know my way around now. You even got on the practice courts, which is awesome. Like so like stuff like that is like really like the content that I feel like engages with people more so than being, sorry to bring up Tennis Channel again, but in a green screen studio and very produced, and it's just, I don't know, it's just not for me.
Yeah, I agree. I hope there's more of that. I think there will be more. I mean, Felix is, showing his journey on Tennis Brothers, but there will also be, I think it would be nice to see it also from kind of a more journalistic point of view. And if you're going to tournaments, for example, like capturing the vibe, maybe talking to some people would be interesting, like hearing the fans, like, so what are you here to watch? How does the atmosphere feel like? So you're getting that kind of more raw behind the scenes feel of a tournament, because that's where their crowds are, that's where the real tennis fans are, and you can get a lot of insight from there. And I've tried a bit with my vlogs, because I have friends who are, coaches, and I know Steph a bit, Tsitsipas and his brother and family. So you get a little bit of insight, and I have accreditation as well, so I do get like into the player restaurant and stuff, and you get a different vibe from what you're seeing maybe on Netflix or what you're seeing as a spectator, because you're behind the scenes, and it's not as glamorous as it looks, when you're
No,
polishing
it's
it,
not. Yeah, I was lucky enough to start to get credentials as like media. So like San Diego Open, for example, not exactly a glam, like the press conference room wasn't like what you see on TV where it's like they're up on a stage, and it was literally just a table, and there's Ons Jabeur and Maria Sakkari and me with my camera and my mic, and it's just like, so it's it's just how it is. I'll be at Cancun, the WTA finals in a couple of weeks, which is kind of exciting. But yeah, I kind of want to do something like that. I was thinking, it's like, you know what, I should probably talk to some people, because on the the application it said no filming of any matches or anything like that, and that's kind of normally what I'll do. I'll find, I'll record just technical things. So it's like, okay, that's not on the table, so I'm gonna have to figure out something else. But it is actually going to be an interesting event, because I'm seeing memes of kind of roasting the event. I don't know, like on Reddit the other day, I saw someone posted they're building it. It looks like on a golf course. It's just a grass field, and they're building this stadium, and people are saying it's going to be like Fire Fest. And I don't, I don't know. We'll see. I'll be there. I don't think so, because it's going to be the same. I don't want to say production company, but like tennis management company that puts on Guadalajara, which in my opinion was a great event. It is interesting that they did choose Cancun, which doesn't have a. They're literally having to build a tennis venue, a courts, and the whole thing, when they could have used basically anywhere else. I mean, I get the. I'm gonna enjoy it. Basically, I'll be on the beach and then go do my press stuff. But like it's I don't know. So I'll be boots on the ground covering, and hopefully I'll come up with some good content of that of that liking, of just sort of boots on the ground type of thing, and figuring out what's the vibe, who people came to watch, how many people are coming from, not Cancun, internationally, I guess. But we'll see.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm looking forward to that content. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think also it's good for, I mean, I have a friend who's a tournament director of like 5, 6 tournaments, WTA and ATP. And it's always interesting to get behind the scenes look. I've been to the Laver Cup. I was behind the scenes there. I was with Wilson. That was fun. You get to see the players. You play on the court. We played on the practice court there and stuff. But you have a different perspective. Like, if the production like the Laver Cup is amazing, then you go to maybe another tournament and it's very much less amazing. It doesn't even have to be Challenger, it could be ATP, and you go and you're like, okay, this was not maybe how I would have done it, and this is not where the crowd gets maybe maximum value for money. I've had a few of those experiences as well. So, and then they're trying something like, hopefully not Firefest, but something a little bit new here in Cancun. And Cancun is like a tourist destination where people, drink themselves to death or whatever. And we'll see how that plays out. And it might be, if it's like the same production crew, usually it kind of bodes well for the quality of the event if they've already done things successfully. So I would love to see your take on that. The interesting part which you mentioned there was that I think ATP WTA, they are getting a little bit I wouldn't say apprehensive. They're getting quite aggressive on like, don't use our footage, don't film anything. We own this product. This is our event, our product. So it's tougher for guys like you and me and other media creators to actually film any playing happening. I haven't had a problem like when I've been traveling before. Stuttgart is always nice. I know the tournament director there and stuff. Mallorca, no problem. But maybe that's happening in a way. And then you have to find other avenues of use of creating content, you know.
Right. And that's, like I said, when I got injured, that's actually sometimes, in this sense, I'm going to say it's a good thing because now I have to get creative and find something else. Because, yeah, typically what I would do, even before I started getting media credentials, is I would just buy a ticket, get there early, go to an outside court and record, an outside court match and get some footage, and maybe I have something to post. And I mean, it makes sense because of, people pay for the broadcast rights and all of this, and that's a big part of it. And technically, I'm broadcasting 1 point or whatever, like, so I get it. And luckily at the in San Diego and Guadalajara, there was no media guide that said don't do this, but for Cancun there was like, yeah, don't do this. Basically, there was like a whole number of things, so it's like, okay, all right, we'll figure it out. I'm just grateful to be a part of it, basically, to be able to get in with the credential, because it is kind of, when I was in San Diego, there was, in my opinion, some of the like legendary photographers and stuff, and like real journalists, and they were kind of like, who are you? What do you do? And it's kind of like, I have an Instagram, like, so yeah, trying to kind of legitimize myself and trying to improve, because like I said, this, what I've been doing online has started to open doors for me. And now, since I'm like in the room, is trying to figure out, learn as much as possible, and then try to find my own way of kind of navigating in that room and seeing what happens from there.
It's an exciting space. Like I met this Italian guy at the head event in Paris when during the French Open, and I don't remember his channel now. It's sad, but it's like I'll put it in the description. But he's a great videographer. Does impressive stuff. Does really like good edits, and he has found his voice. So you're finding a voice, and you're bringing a different angle, which you're not getting from Tennis Channel, Tennis TV, which are they're huge companies, or maybe not. Tennis Channel is not a huge company. I don't know what the setup is, but at least they're huge production teams, and they're doing it in the kind of old-fashioned way. And here you can bring something a bit new, a bit up close. People are getting used to social media. People are getting used to watching reels or finding other angles. And for a coach like you, I think also going to the practice courts, maybe you're able to film there. That's where you can get really close, because the sometimes with the match play, it doesn't have that much value anyway, because people can watch it on TV, watch the highlights. So where you can make a difference is kind of the stuff that happens behind all the tournament play. So I think that's where the interesting part is.
Yeah, one of my best posts from Guadalajara was just Leila Fernandez picking up tennis balls, filling up her racket like a junior, basically. And it's like, hey, like, these players do the same thing that you do. Like, everyone is accountable. Everything is about the same. Like, it's just, so yeah, 100%. I met some people in New York, like tennis mentor Ashley.
Ashley, yeah, he's a
Yeah,
great guy. I like
and
him a lot.
it was so cool. I just kind of ran into him at a hotel. I'm like, hey, like, and we kind of knew each other from online, and it's cool to finally. There's been so much of that, which is kind of interesting in the past couple of years, is like meeting someone in person that from the internet, basically, and it's cool. Like, it is kind of weird in a sense, to where it's like, this is a complete stranger, but what's going on in my life and all this stuff. It's it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think I've learned over the years, like it's like most communities are smaller than you think, right? Like that's what I've learned. Like even you think, okay, I was in DC politics, I thought it would be, huge loads of people, but after a while you get to know even like the senators and the congressmen and the stuff. Like you go in the same metro and whatever, right? So you're getting to be in that small bubble world wherever you go. And tennis is the same. And tennis influencers or content creators, whatever you want to call it, tennis is a big sport, but in the tennis industry, any industry, I think, becomes smaller and more. You get to know people, and it's fun. And people who like tennis are usually nice people, most of all of them. And you get to know new people, new ideas, new way you can do collaborations. And I think it's a great little crowd, and everybody loves playing tennis usually. So when you go to these other like events and stuff, you always find time to hit some balls or do something, which is kind of what unites us in a way. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. Yeah, I was talking to some of the other media people that I met. It's like, hey, I'm bringing my rackets to Cancun. I don't know what court we're gonna be able to hit on, but like, bring your rackets, we'll figure it out.
Should be courts there, I guess, right? But so what rackets are you bringing now? We're getting into back to that old topic again, but I'm curious.
I'm sponsored by Wilson basically on like just the, the typical coaches thing. So post surgery, my daily is kind of Clash Pro, easy on the arm. It does have some weight to it, so I can be able to rally. And I tried Luxolon Eco, which when that came out, I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's, plastic bottles, it's some whatever. But I actually really enjoy it. Like it works for me. I can't use ALU power, it's too rough. I could go hybrid, but I don't really want to spend the money to get gut or anything like that. Not for what I'm doing. I mean, I did after surgery, I did try to start playing matches again just to kind of because I felt like I needed to do it basically because it's like I kind of thought I would never be able to play again. So just whatever was easiest on the arm. But then I'm like you, dude. I switch between rackets like t-shirts, like if it's not like something that I'm serious about, like lessons, Wilson Clash. I've been using the shift, then like blade basically, and I mean if I'm really feeling it, I'll use a pro staff or something like that. But mainly day-to-day beater, Wilson Clash Pro 16 by 20. It kind of ticks all the boxes of what I need to be able to do. And that's pretty much what I've been using basically. Like before that, I was with Head for a while, and I was on the gravity, the speed a little bit, and I was trying to do the prestige thing. I've got PT 57As, and it's fun, but it's just, I can't I can't realistically play a match like that. Shout out to that guy that you said you played that like was using that. But that's wild.
Yeah, he played quite flat as well. So I think there's like you can maybe get more. I get like the purist because I've been part purist or crazy tinkerer, but sometimes I feel like the purist maybe holds you back. But it's also like okay, that's why I've said like what makes you smile. What makes you? 'Cause some people just can't play with modern rackets. I see a great benefit in some modern rackets. Like I see like oh they bring out the shift. It's such an easy racket to use. It has a nice feeling. The 300-gram one I prefer in this case. And it's just like you get so much more for free. So it feels very difficult then you could start going back to a PT7A or something that's like a Wilson 6195, which I love when I started playing tennis. And then you start noticing like, oh, the sweet spot is minuscule on this one. I don't get nothing for here. So it's fun to switch sometimes, but for me, my realization has been like in the last few matches, because I've been playing a lot of matches recently, is that the more I switch, the more I hurt my tennis. So just sticking to one racket for match play at least helps a lot for me. It's then when it comes to coaching, I can understand the Clash is perfect.
It's so easy. Yeah, it's like soft. Even if I'm, lazy and mishit a ball, it's perfectly fine. If I switch to even like a blade or something, I can start to feel it if I'm late and making contact like this. It can be rough, but um, yeah. What are you using? What's your match racket these days?
It's a good question. I recently started playing around because I had a period where I went to a court, like a period. It was like a few weeks ago. Went to the court. I had so many test rackets because I was testing the Prestiges. The new Prestiges are out now. Percepts. I had two or three Pacific bats. There was the Prestige Classic as well, which is now reissued. So there was too many rackets in the bag, and then you start getting lost. Like you start testing. Oh, okay, you understand what's happening. You've gone through like a batch of rackets, so you've gone through the prestiges. Then you get to the percepts, and suddenly like what you're regularly using is just so far away. I mean, it's like I still not don't have like a super good like oh now I need to do a reset 3 day period because it's so rapid with the rackets. I need to keep up, and get the reviews out because otherwise I lose momentum and I don't have time. I want to do other content as well. So then I lose that racket I was playing, which was the Radical MP from Head, which is not like a fantastic racket by any means, but does most things pretty well, I would say. So it's a balanced racket. So that's still in the bag, the Radical. Trying now to stop playing around too much with rackets. But
Is
then
it the new Radical, the purplish
the
one?
new Radical, yeah, it's not maybe the sexiest you've seen, depending on if you like orange or not, but it's a good stick. But I now just went to the bag and picked up a Pro Kennex KIQ Plus 5 Pro, which is a very bad name for a tennis racket, because not even I can remember it sometimes. But And it's actually like very arm friendly, so you reset your arm a bit. Because since I'm testing so much, and you know this, if you have the whole rainbow of Wilson rackets, for example, maybe different grip shapes and sizes, and then you have a new string, you're testing eco power, then you're testing another string, then it's a multi or whatever. So I just said, okay, I want to have an arm-friendly, a little bit easier to use option. So it's a 100 square inch, which is not usually my comfort zone. But it has the 1620, which you mentioned with the Clash. I like the 1620 because the 20 crosses actually help you control the ball a bit on the flatter shot. So you feel like you're a little bit more confident in just swinging out on the ball. And that has worked really well. Like, you know, in the Open, I used it 4 matches, won 3, lost the semis, but I couldn't run with my foot, so I still played pretty okay. So far, so good. We'll see if next tournament, which starts on Wednesday, if I'm still with that. But yeah, most likely. The radical
Dang, yeah.
is coming in the bag, you know.
Yeah, of course. You got to take care of that foot, man.
Yeah, I'm
That's
rolling on it
like,
now while we're talking, so we're trying
okay, good. Dang.
this
Yeah,
with the spike ball.
I haven't played like a proper tournament, oof, in so long. And there's like some interesting things happening in Southern California. There was like a ladder that you didn't have to be a part of any tennis club. It was like just an Instagram thing basically, where you get set up. It's like an app. You pick a guy, and then you have like 2 weeks to sort it out. You report the score, and you either move up and move down. And like LA is a little bit out of my way, but also I was kind of coming out of surgery, and I didn't want to be out at the club getting beat playing bad tennis. That's kind of not good for business if word starts getting around. Like, so I was like, all right, I'll go to LA. And God, it's like the mentality, like match mentality is so different than, because I able to hit balls every day and I hit a good ball, but like getting into like, oh man, it's 30-40, I'm already down a break. Like, what have I, it's crazy. It's in more power to you if you're just like consistently doing it, because that's the way you need to do it. Because if you're kind of, I found if I'm like kind of hopping into competitive situations and out, like I'm not improving basically.
No, it's a nightmare, and I think also you mentioned a very very good point. Like if like you're a good player, but if you're like just jumping into tournaments, you're gonna feel like fish out of water, and you're gonna have some tough losses maybe, or just bad scores, which you wouldn't normally have. And then probably won't happen, but people will be like, oh, you're not a good player. You're a coach, so you're supposed to have a little bit of a, like aura around being a coach because coaches are generally good players. And even for me, it can be like that. Like, okay, do you want to post this shit match because people won't listen to my advice? You know, I feel very confident about my tennis advice or my gear advice. I'm trying to be very very balanced. Comes from the journalistic background, I think. But obviously, I'm not a fantastic player. I'm just trying to improve in my own like measurement, right? But like for me, it was also like this. So I played loads of matches a period and then there's summer, so there's no tournaments here in Spain or anywhere else. I guess like it's pretty dead during summer because too hot
Why is
maybe.
that?
It's strange. Like the tournament periods here, and it was the same thing when I lived in Malta. It's like starts a few weeks ago, like September or October. Then it starts like ITF Masters tournaments. We have a few opens. There was an open during the summer, which was the last tournament I played, and before that I hadn't played in months. So I was like you said, first match you play, you're like, what is this? What am I? The first set I lost to a guy I don't think I should lose a set to, and I was like, how do I even do this? I think I lost the sets like 6-3 or something. I was like, what is this sport? And then I managed to, and I was playing with 3 different rackets or whatever. I'm like, what is my racket? I don't even know. And then you get into it and you start, okay, I have to fight. I have to not give away points. And after like a few matches, you start seeing your own behavior a little bit better. But then I had a few months off, no tournaments. Played like 2 matches maybe 2 weeks ago or something. And I was playing horrible, like really like, wow. Like, 8 rackets in the bag, different ones, and playing horrible. And then this week I decided, okay, man, I have to get back. I just bring 2 different rackets. That's the max I can bring to the court, and then I'll just stick to that. And then I'm feeling the ball again. I'm playing pretty okay. So for next week's matches, unless my foot is going to be bad, I'm feeling pretty good. But it's match play, and I tell people that all the time that I talk to in consultations or just club players that you talk to, and I'm sure like for your students as well. If you have a student that's like, oh, I'm becoming better and better at playing tennis, and then you put them in a match situation, And they're like, what on earth happened? I can't breathe. One of my opponents, like first round, he was like, oh, I'm not breathing well. Like he's a decent player, you know? And I'm like, did you play a tournament in a long time? No, no, I haven't. You know, I'm like, this is why. That's you're struggling because you're so nervous that the whole system just shuts down on you, you know, and then you can't play tennis. It's like how it is.
It's sad, but that's nerves, and that's kind of, I mean, that's what makes tennis so rewarding too. Is like, it's one thing just to be able to hit the ball properly, but to compete and to really throw yourself in the fire, whether you're ready or not, or healthy or not, it's a crazy thing. And yeah, I should probably find. So it's funny, we're the opposite here. I would say there's more tournaments during the summer during any time. So actually, just at my club this weekend, there was a tournament, and I was just kind of out there watching the matches basically, and God, just so many, people melting down and stuff. And it's like, man, I know that's kind of why I make some of those memes too. Is a lot of the stuff where it's like, whatever, it's self-deprecating. Like I'll get inspiration from like getting some dude the other day, my buddy Jermaine. He hit like 4 drop shots on me in one game. And I was like, what the hell? Like, and so anyway, it produced a meme out of it because it's like, this is a real life situation. This is a real thing. Like, um, anyways, yeah, it's a wild thing. I do want to ask a question about clothing because you're switching rackets and stuff. What is your go-to to wear during a match, brand wise, or maybe just what are you shoe wise even?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I have a friend of mine that lives here that I got to know a few like maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, Irakli, and he runs a brand called Nordic Dots, which is like pre-washed, kind of environmentally focused tennis clothing. I mean, they do paddle and some golf soon, maybe as well. I don't know. But it's really great quality, you know, and so he gives me clothes, I wear it, you know, there's no financial really benefit for me technically, but I love the clothes. So I wear them most of the time, but I can obviously wear Adidas or Nike or whatever if that's what's in my wardrobe. You know, I used to buy all the clothes myself, but these clothes are so good because they last the washes, and I feel like they feel really good from the straight of, you know, out of the box, you know. So the pre-washing really helps, I feel, although it's maybe more for environmental friendly reasons. So I wear those for my tennis apparel, and then I test shoes all the time. So that's a problem also with maybe that's why I'm rolling my
Your
foot right
foot,
now. I don't
dude.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you feel that. But so what I went to and I can recommend people listening to this, like was feeling my knee a bit on and off. I have a left knee problem, but it's not there. If I play mainly on clay, it's not something I feel a lot, you know, these days. When I played in Malta on really heavy cement courts, I used to have more problems. So, but still, I was feeling okay, bit of niggles here and there. So I went to a friend of mine, a podiatrist, and she recommended me to get like custom insoles to get really like, because I was putting 8 kilos, like 16 pounds, I guess, on my left side. So it's like when I'm playing tennis, I'm putting like so much more pressure on my left side, you know, because you're always tilting a bit when you're playing tennis. And it's just like the way maybe my feet are shaped or and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, I'm putting that much more pressure. Then no wonder my knees hurting, right? So I got some insoles to really balance out my feet, so they're not maybe so, you know, they're more balanced, like more flat. Like it's better to be a flat foot in tennis than having this concave, you know, style of feet, the arches, so extreme arch, which I kind of have. So now I've been feeling no problems with the knee. So with the shoes I've been using now, I've been using the same shoes due to that. It's the A6 Gel Resolution 9 for clay. And then for hard courts, I have Bubble Up Pro Pulse Fury 3. And those are really dampened shoes. I focus not on speed or lightness or whatever. I try to focus on how can my knees stay as happy as possible, right? So the dampening and the comfort and the stability is the key for me, not the speed or you know, like that.
The aesthetics. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
no,
course.
aesthetics I don't really, even with tennis rackets, like the Procanics is really ugly. It's called Top Banana on forums and stuff. Like it's not a nice looking racket. Historic Procanics.
Right.
Uh, I would, if I would keep playing with it, I would black it out or something, you know, because it's not very nice.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm not so picky on looks. I'm more about playability and feel, right? What about you?
Wow.
Shoes?
Uh, God, I've tried. Right now, I'm wearing On shoes, the Roger
Mm.
Pro or whatever they call it. I was at the On did an event in New York, and I
Oh
was
yeah, that was
there.
cool with Roger, right?
That was pretty cool. That was a good day. Yeah, that so I was there. Basically, they invited me out, and I had no intention of going to New York basically, but I got an invite, and so I was like, okay, I'll make a trip out of this. So I did that, and I hit up, these other events, and then went to the Open. So I've been on a good run recently, to be honest. So yeah, I've been wearing the On shoes and just kind of seeing testing them out, basically seeing how long they last. So I've since New York, so what is that, 2.5 months, maybe a little bit less, of just seeing how long they last. I like them. It took me, this is going to sound dumb, but like I was moving around a bit in them, like more than I would like. And then after like a couple weeks, I realized they gave me a size 11 and not a size 10 and a half. I'm a 10 and a half. And I was told that's because, oh, usually you want to size up anyways, but I don't know. So I can't give it like a real honest review because it's not exactly my size, but for coaching, walking around long days on my feet, the extra room is actually kind of nice. So I'm enjoying them. They're heavy but stable, and like if I'm playing, I'm switching them out for another shoe that was sent my way, the Diadora B Icon. It took me a little time to adjust to the shape. It's kind of like higher up than what I'm used to, but good shoe actually surprised me. I would have never have bought it if it wasn't sent to me, but if I was to buy a shoe again, I would probably buy that. It's pretty good. I went through I mean, I'm not posting any content, but I've been through, God, so many shoes this year. So there's those two. The New Balance Fuel Cell was fine. Not bad, but I didn't fall in love with it. The Vapor Pro or the Vapor 9.5 came back, and that was kind of an interesting one because there was so much chatter online for years about like, hey, bring this shoe back. The new stuff sucks. And then it came back, and they just sat on like nobody cared. I mean, you still see them around, and when I tried them, I was curious to see, is this just nostalgia of like, was that shoe really that good, or is it just, I was like 10 years younger and I felt better. And yeah, it was fine. It wasn't like I would still put the gel resolutions probably at the top of the list of just, function and like, performance wise of like what I need for a long day on court. Tried the new whatever it is, the new Nike Vapor stuff, and it's fine. But yeah, I don't know. I tried them all, and I still think Asics is probably the way to go if I was gonna buy a shoe. Actually, shout out to Wilson. I know that's technically who I'm with. The Rush Pro is good. I liked it. Wore it out pretty fast. It surprised me how good it was because normally racket brand shoes I've never on anyone's radar, but decent shoe actually. And luckily, I have no lower body issues. I try to maintain that. I do a lot of yoga and stuff like that to try to avoid anything. But yeah, kind of like you in a way where I'm trying a bunch of different things and not really sticking to one thing in particular, at least not so far this year.
No, I think that's. I mean, it's tough sometimes for general people just to keep testing because it costs some money, of course. But like there are many brands that are not known. Like Diadora, I don't think it's a very well-known brand in the US. It's not even like a well-known brand in Europe or a very popular one, in my opinion. But they can produce some really good shoes, like a Mizuno. There can be some shoes. I tried some new Lotto prototype that they sent to me because they wanted some opinion before it's released, like a year before. And that was like a very good shoe. Like I really liked that shoe. It was excellent, right? So I never tried properly a Lotto shoe before. So you have to have always an open mind. Sometimes with rackets it can be difficult because you feel like, oh, is this Alibaba? They bought some mold from some it's just some crap that they're pretending to be a new innovation. But sometimes you are surprised. That's why you have to try to have an open mind. Even with strings, the Eco Power string, which I guess the one you're using, not the Eco Rough, is Eco Power, right?
No, it's the green one, kind of
Yeah, the
like
green one, Eco Power,
yeah.
yeah.
There's another one now though, right? It's like
Eco Rough,
grayish.
yeah,
Yes, yeah. I haven't
silver.
tried that yet.
That's very good. I'm keen to hear what you think about that one because the Eco Rough, I preferred it over. I mean, Eco Power wasn't bad string, not by any means, but the Eco Rough actually I really enjoyed that. Tried that in the Radical. I only had one set, so I didn't get sent by company. It was Henrik who gave it to me, a buddy of mine who tests stuff as well. And
Yeah, I
some
we follow each other too. Henrik Wallenstein. I don't know if I'm
yeah,
pronouncing that right.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's cool.
he's a good guy as well. He's also gearhead, and yeah, he gave me a set and I tried it. But sometimes it's funny, like you get like string samples, and then a company sends you like 2 sets, and you're like, okay, it's gonna be tough to give you like a super good evaluation in 2 sets. I mean, sometimes I've gotten 1 set. Oh, and you string it up in maybe the wrong tension, or it's not in the perfect racket for it, or it doesn't really work. So it's tough to make like that super detailed review if you get 1 set. And for the company, I don't think the cost of sending a racket or a string is very high. So sometimes their cheapness is really hurting them, I think.
Well, that it could be that, or also something that I've kind of found out in kind of, like I said, now I'm in a different room now talking to brands, is a lot of the times it's like not tennis people. So
Yeah.
somebody might just be like, "Oh, here's one," and that's good enough, and they don't know that, like, yeah, you're gonna want to try it out for a couple weeks, different tensions. So like, it could be that as well, which is sad, where it's like it's not where, yeah, kind of I got to a level and I realized I was like, oh, there's actually not a lot of like tennis people involved in some of these brands and some of these decisions. Obviously, the bigger brands, they do have tennis people, but some of it is I think probably part of like post pandemic, like, hey, tennis is sort of there's an uptick in it. Like let's get in here. And so like there's a reason why I asked about the clothing and stuff, because like different new new tennis clothes have come out, and then it's like, oh, these materials are like you've probably never played tennis before, because like these materials are not made for tennis basically. Um, so yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, exactly. Do you see that when you're a student, for example? Do some people show up in sneakers, or are they know what to wear and they are into
Oh
gear kind of?
man. So beginners, no, I see a lot of beginners. It's always like a running shoe, like a Hoka or something. I don't know if they're big in Europe, but they
Yeah,
became,
I've seen them. People love Hokas apparently, right? I heard some
yeah,
friends like, "Oh, it's so
they're
comfortable."
huge here in the US. And like I'm a pretty big sneakerhead, to be honest, so I'm like whole into that, and like just the shape is weird to me. Like I like running shoes too, but anyway, so a lot of Hokas, different, running shoes. And then basically I don't say, first couple lessons I don't say anything, because it's like, hey, you're here. I don't want people to think like, because tennis is an expensive sport, and I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I have to buy all this stuff. This racket is not good. You mean this racket from Target doesn't work? Like, so, yeah, a lot of that. I have been seeing a lot of, there's a whole community in LA of like this tennis crew, which is really cool. They're great people, but they wear basketball shoes on court, which is, I mean, I've done that before when I was in high school. And like, if you're gonna wear a different shoe, it's somewhat relatable when it comes to like the lateral mobility. It's gonna get destroyed on a court. I mean, actually, I don't know if you've been keeping track. Layla Fernandez, she's been
Yeah.
wearing a basketball shoe, which is like wild. I like, so I saw that in San Diego, and like I didn't even catch it. I posted a video of her practicing, and I got like 10 DMs of like, what is she wearing? And I was looking at it and trying to like ID it. I couldn't do it. And then eventually in Guadalajara, a buddy of mine got like a one-on-one interview with her. And I was like, dude, you have to ask this question. And like, she was cool. I thought she wasn't going to answer it because it would be like a hush hush type of thing. But she's like, no, I like the shoe. It's like, whoa, that's interesting. So I see some basketball shoes. A lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you know how like Nike has their like premium shoe, and then there's like the next tier, and then like the lower tier. I don't even know what they're called, but I see a lot of that. Um, and it's like, okay, I guess it's fine. I've never worn them. I've always just bought, whatever the premium shoe is. But for the most part, running shoes to basketball to like that, and then obviously when you find like a real player, they're wearing a proper tennis shoe. It's usually a lot of Nike, like the whatever the Vapor, whatever it's called. The one that the players are wearing now, or not wearing actually. Um,
Vapor
which
11 maybe you can think of that
Yes,
one.
that
Yeah, or the
exactly.
Pro
And
1. Now there's Pro 2 as well. Vapor
the
Pro 2.
Pro 2, I see a ton of that, and I think a little bit of that is just people love Nike. Like they just have a brand loyalty to Nike, even though their tennis stuff I think has been not great for kind of a while. I can't remember the last time, because like if I like something, I'll buy it. I can't remember the last time I actually bought something from Nike Court. I mean, their Instagram doesn't exist anymore. They like when Tiafo, I don't know if you remember his outfit for Australian Open with all the colors, and like
Yeah.
people were tagging Nike Court, the fuck is this, blah blah blah, and then their Instagram is gone away, like, and it's still gone, uh, which is crazy because they have like a great stable of players, even though a bunch left. I mean, think Carlos, Francis, Sinner, like, but anyways, people usually will just wear Nike. I don't see a lot of Adidas around. When the Barricade came out again, there was a lot of that, but then I think people just kind of switched to Asics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think like that signaled a little bit of I mean, it's not only that, but like Nike took a step back after Roger. I think like went to Uniqlo and they lost a little bit of that with the RF mess they had, and he wanted the logo back, but they had a contract. I think they kind of stepped away a bit from tennis, you know, at least internally. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not working for Nike. I have a friend there, but you don't see them so much into tennis and their outfits. To be fair, if you look at apparel, like when they were on their prime, you know, they had Agassi, Sampras, and then the years after they had Nadal and Federer, who kind of carrying the whole brand. People were buying everything from Fed or Rafa, depending on their hero. So it's just like, you know, who do you like? You're a Rafa guy, you're a Fed guy. You buy this outfit with like the sleeveless shirt and the pirate pants or whatever.
I had
Or you
those.
buy the, yeah, I love those too. I
It's
mean,
crazy.
or you buy like the classy Federer, you know, we're like Darth Federer who's like gliding on the court. And it was just like prime time tennis because you had these two gladiators with different styles, like two Marvel superheroes with different superpowers, you know? So if from a marketing point of view, it's like dreamland to be in tennis. And then now I guess like basketball and American football, whatever, it was so much more exciting for Nike or maybe more financially viable because there's no like I mean they have Alcaraz, but it's tougher obviously to just maybe sell stuff through him as they could through Fed and Nadal.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. You're right. Like Alcaraz is definitely like the shining star now. Obviously, he has a long way to go to reach that same status as those guys, but I think it's there because it's like Alcaraz is universally loved. Sinner is basically universally loved. Holger Rune's Nike too, right? So that's like three. Yeah, and like I know people feel a certain way. Some people love him, some people not so much, but like that's not bad. Like when it comes to like, all right, because Tiafoe's sort of in the middle generation of like, all right, he's maybe got 6 or 7 years, or I don't know, I don't want to put a date on it, but when you think of like the next generation, there probably is an opportunity, but I think you're right where maybe there's just not a lot of return of investment. I mean, when it comes to how, because tennis is niche basically. It's niche of niche, especially tennis clothes. There's a lot of like I said, other brands that have sort of like, for example, and I'm not just being like a shill here, but like the Wilson stuff has gotten better. Like the Wilson clothing before, it would you would literally only see like a tennis coach wearing it because they gave it to him and it's like it's whatever, it's free. But like at least here in LA, because like so here in LA, I'm in Orange County, but I'll go to LA a lot and like little by little I see a lot of like sort of like the classic tennis style of like what Wilson has done, or even Aloe or Lululemon, different things which are almost just as expensive as Nike, basically, or if not more. And people have been kind of gravitating towards that rather than, you know, Nike or Adidas or Asics, I guess, has never been really big on clothing, but any of the top clothing companies that I guess used to have like the marketplace within their grasp. I don't know what's going on. Like you said, I'm not there, but I think, and also I think a little bit of it too could be, at least with Nike with the shoes, is like their biggest release of the year was like the Vapor 9.5 coming back, and it's like how much do they want to promote a shoe that they did 10 years ago as opposed to like the newest technology of the day? So I don't know. That's got to be kind of weird.
Yeah, it's you do feel it. Like, and also there's more space now for smaller brands to make, you know, an impact, or for like standard tennis brands. I also think that the Wilson line is one that has taken maybe the biggest step from all the manufacturers. Like Babolat, they're not even trying, but and Yonex usually pretty ugly. Sorry, Yonex. Like your clothes are not famous for being like great looking on the tennis court. But the Wilson really took a step up. You know, I don't know if they have any players that I can think of. Like it seems to be like people use Wilson rackets get Nike clothes or something, you know.
Yeah, it's they have one Marta Kostyuk. She's
Ah, yeah.
like their one whatever they call it 360 athlete, which like it's like I was saying is interesting because like most of the time I think probably before the pathway was like, all right, put the gear on the players and people will buy it. But for example, like a bunch of guys wearing Wilson stuff and like they don't really sponsor a male player on the tour. It just it looks good. The quality is like decent. They really don't even have like they have a few brick and mortar stores around, but like it's mainly just like an online thing. So it's it's interesting to kind of watch things sort of change little by little. Don't know where that goes or how long it lasts, but yeah, I would agree. Wilson has kind of stepped it up, and like I said, Lululemon, it's good. Their clothes are good. They're expensive, but like they're not specifically made for tennis, but like I mean Adrian Manarino is like wearing Lulu out there. I'm pretty sure it's not a sponsored thing, but like when I saw him up close, I was like, I think he's wearing Lululemon. So it's functional. It works.
Yeah, they think these brands like I mean I think American Penguin, is that what they're called? I think Isla wore that
Yeah,
or still
that
wears
looks
that.
good.
Looks very good. Like also, I mean, and the Kostyuk's clothes look great. Like she has these kind of outfits that you don't see on anyone else. So I think these are really nice. And you can make a statement like this is a solo sport. So for most of the time, so you have actually a great idea, a great way here for a brand to look different. And sometimes in tennis, you have two guys that wear the same exact outfit, and you're like, what is this? This is a failed marketing opportunity 101, right? Like you have two guys wearing the exact same outfit playing US Open quarterfinals. This is prime time. What are you doing? How can you fail with this? Like it should be, you should immediately send a better set or another kit or tell them to wear different kits or whatever. But it's
Wear different
sometimes
colors.
tennis.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I know. It's or even like I think what the NBA does well because the NBA they have to wear a uniform. But like a big thing is I don't know if you watch, but like the tunnel walk when they're
Yeah, yeah.
entering their arena, they're always dripped out in some type of brand, and I think that kind of brings in excitement even from like not even if you're a basketball player, like dang, what was LeBron wearing? Like what is that? And that kind of brings in outside money and outside interest into the sport with someone, it brings in just a whole different avenue, which I think I mean, there was one instance where I don't know if you remember it. Venus Williams was walking into the U.S. Open and was wearing like some super flash outfits, and it's like, whoa, that's actually pretty cool. I think maybe tennis can start doing that. I don't know if players would be into that because I know most players are kind of low key, but I can think of a few that like Carlos loves sneakers. Like I think he would be super into that if Nike was kind of like, hey, let's do something. Let's make something out of nothing basically that doesn't exist yet, but I don't know. That's me giving away ideas for free basically.
No, but yeah, sometimes we have to do that. I think that's this. I try to do that a lot. Like, and they're probably bad ideas, but I think like a lot could be done in the production. It's like production of tennis as a sport because, like, what sells? Usually, I mean, whether you like it or not, people like the drama. They like some aggro. They like some um, coaching, or they like something happening on the court because a lot of tennis is pretty stale. Like, so you have 25 seconds you have to wait before the shots. They do the warm up, which takes time from the actual entertainment of the event. People cannot talk, so I mean, US maybe the US Open is a little bit more rowdy, but still, like the players are really kind of oh you have to be quiet and stuff like that, and that kind of sells tennis as a pretty boring, old-fashioned product. And I think there's something we need to change there. And look, wearing flashy outfits, having more of a personality, or actually getting players to wear more of their personality on the court and being allowed to maybe cuss a bit, or throwing a racket doesn't give you like a points penalty unless you hit someone or whatever. I think that's good for tennis. I mean, like, look at McEnroe. I mean, he sold loads of tickets. Curious, crazy guy on court, but sells loads of tickets. Interesting personalities people want to watch because there's something different there. And I think we just have to sometimes get away from this being like this old school gentlemanly sport. It has to be entertainment, and that's what we're selling. And tennis has so many emotions. We talked about like playing a tournament, playing a match. There's so many emotions happening in your body while you're playing, and it's like you're nervous. Everybody knows who plays matches, how it feels to double fault on a set point, or doing something stupid, or just unforced error in the middle of the net on an important moment in the match. So I think we need to capture that better and endorse that a bit better.
Have you been keeping track of I don't know what they call it, UTS League, the Ultimate
Yeah,
Tennis
yeah, yeah,
Showdown?
yeah. I've seen.
Okay. So they had one in LA like 2 or 3 months ago before the US Open. And I was going to go regardless because it's tennis. It's as close as it's going to get because Indian Wells is still about 2 hours from where I'm at. Um, and I thought it was going to be kind of because I watched the original one during the pandemic and it was like, all right, whatever. This is better than nothing. I thought it was going to be kind of gimmicky and corny, but it was a bit of kind of like the atmosphere that you described. It was like just as much fun as pretty much anything else that I've been to. Obviously, it's not real tennis. The format is kind of funny, but when it came to like the environment, they had the DJ of the LA Clippers there, and it was like being at a basketball game, which like if you've been at a US basketball game, basically as the the game is going, there's music. There's like a DJ actually playing songs, and then if it gets to like a tense moment, like he'll lower the volume and then just like, let them play. But like as soon as like it happens, boom, music again. And this was happening during the UTS, and it was like a very different environment. There wasn't a quiet please. It was literally do whatever you want, walk up and down, go to the restroom whenever you want. Uh I mean, it was hammed up a little bit. Like my friend Mark was the MC, and like Benoit Paire cracks a racket, and like literally like immediately the MC's like, "Who wants a free racket?" And everyone's like, "Woo!" And he throws his racket in the stands. It was that was maybe a little bit much, but like there was some aspects of it that I think are good. They had the coaches on the court, and like the coach, let's say if there's a changeover, the coach would change over with the player. So it's not like the what we have now where it's like, okay, you can coach, but only if the player's on your side. And if they're on the other side, you can't do anything, which is kind of, I don't know, I think that's kind of dumb. You should be, if you're going to be allowed to coach, you should be allowed to coach. And also, like, not all the players brought their, like, real coach. But, like, they announced and said, hey, this is Gael Monfils's coach. And that's something that I think the tennis broadcast, we never really know unless it's someone super famous or, like, Stefano Tsitsipas. Everyone knows his dad is his coach. Like, but a lot of the times you're watching and they'll show the box and it'll be like, who is that? Like, who are those people? So, I mean, when you watch like a Lakers game, the Lakers coach. They maybe even say something about him. So I think that could be something interesting. And there's bits of the UTS which I think are good. I don't know how that would translate to like a real tennis match, but I don't know. I think any of these tournaments can like a real tournament can experiment and try, because I know Laver Cup kind of had that weird. Were you, when you said you were there, were you at this last one
No,
in
in
Vancouver?
Geneva, 2019.
Ah,
So,
okay.
but there
Because
was Roger and Rafa playing doubles, so it was a good time. Yeah.
that was a good time. Well, because this last one was kind of weird, right? With the whole thing between Monfils and
Yeah.
FAA of like, there is like, what is this event kind of? Is this a serious thing? Is this not a serious thing? And it would be interesting for just, I don't know, make it the ATP finals or just some, whatever thing where it's like, all right, we're going to try a different, not necessarily a different format, but like, hey, if you want to get up, go get up. Because that's another thing, having gone to so many tournaments, like casual people don't understand that like you can't just get up and go use the restroom when you want to, like in baseball or other sports. You have to wait for a changeover and you're literally stuck in there. Or if you go to the restroom and come back, and it's the end of the set, you have to wait until the third game to get back in. And that's like a lot of people, I saw a lot of really upset people like, hey, I'm here, I want to go in. And like they just didn't understand. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe not, but I agree with you. There's probably a few things that we can do to kind of open things up and keep it a little bit more light. I know in some places like Wimbledon that would never happen because it's all proper. They still have their curfew and stuff like that. But at the US Open, it was a little bit rowdy, but there was still like the umpire turning back, hey, we can hear you, can you keep it down, type of deal.
Yeah, I'm actually becoming more and more seeing tennis like as more working in tennis. You're like seeing it more as a product, and like you have to sell it, and without being like with still loving the sport as I have since I was a kid. But you need to add some elements, and I think you need to let in some noise and let like players get used to it, because I think in the beginning every change feels weird in every aspect of life. Like if you change something, it feels strange. You have to get used to it. It's like the human behavior, right? But the players are they're used to like being coddled with the silence, and I have to get my seconds before I serve and stuff. But if you can't deal with that, then that's maybe not for you, right? This is something that has to change. And I also like, people usually get pissed like, oh, but tennis is a single sport, you should be able to solve your own problems, otherwise you can. But the coaching dynamic adds so much to the storytelling. Like, who is this coach? Why does he work with him? How long have they worked together? What does this coach add to his game or detract from his game? What is the dynamic? That adds relationship, and relationship is interesting, right? So I think sometimes we forget relationships in tennis. We sell this product as like this guy who has good ground strokes and a good first serve plays this guy who has good ground strokes and a good first serve, and the game is just pretty dull. Like that's not a product you want to watch, you know. But if they have some aggro, you sell that. Like, oh, the history of these two guys, they don't like each other because when they were 13, they had like a fist fight in the locker room, you know. That's a story, and you can, oh, so they don't like each other. Much more fun to watch. Like there's an extra added, you know, spice on the line. And if you have a coach, there's a story behind the coach and the section of the coach, and they have arguments, or the player and the coach have arguments, and that's just added entertainment value to the product. I don't think it attracts anything really. Like what's the problem? You know, it's like just people who are very sports purists that think that it's a huge issue.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, tennis wise, it hasn't been bad, but one of my favorite rivalries to have kept track of in the past years is Stefanos and Danil. And it's just, you can go deep down in the rabbit hole of when that started on the outside court in Miami, and even up until this year where it's like Danil danced because Stefanos danced last year, and like even with the coaching stuff, like that iconic moment, like can he talk every point? Like, man, you're a small cat to the umpire. That's like, and it's awesome. Like it's actually really really awesome to see. Depending, it doesn't matter who you support, or like I said, even sometimes the matches are kind of whatever. But just knowing when you see that matchup, I'm like, okay, I'm tuning in for that because something's gonna happen, like, or something will lead from that. And there's not too much of that. I don't know who else has like beef. I mean, how much could you have? Because a lot of it, like I think people don't understand, is like right after the match, they see each other in the locker room. They probably are staying at the same hotel. It's kind of, it's such a small, like that's something that I realized starting with credentials is it's literally like play the match, do press, and they're both like there. So it's like I don't know, but yeah, I think that helps with tennis, and I don't see how it takes away from the product at all. It's just a bunch of old heads basically kind of like, but like you said, even back in the day it was like that. I mean, Jimmy Connors was like, a wild man himself. It wasn't my era, but from the stuff I've read between him and McEnroe, and it's always gone on. It only helps.
Yeah, I don't see any big issues. Like, I mean, the players might find it like, oh, some players will want to be Iceman like Borg, but at least you have a contrast. So you had McEnroe then, or you can have Kyrgios and then a guy who doesn't make any emotions, and Kyrgios trying to get under his skin. That's an interesting drama. Just taking Kyrgios as an example. There's other guys that do that too, but I think we need to allow the personalities to be there, the coaches to be a part of the personality, because that grows the story of the player. And if he changes coaches, that's interesting. And having more moments, like, I mean, you had Kyrgios, Tsitsipas in Wimbledon. Like, that was like maybe not the best played match ever, but the drama was so selling, marketable, interesting, that it leads to so much more social media exposure, exposure online, tennis grows. Because I think sometimes we overstate the value of the actual tennis quality, because a lot of matches are mediocre. Like, tennis, it can be like, oh, okay, this guy's serving well, and then he has a bad period. He's doing some double faults, and he's losing the sets 4-6. Tennis quality is like when you see Alcaraz Djokovic. Okay, that's amazing tennis quality. Or even Alcaraz Sinner, Federer Rafa, these guys that can play on like astronomical levels of tennis. But in many other matches, it's more interesting maybe if you reduce the tennis quality by 10% and you add the personal drama or the inner turmoil of the player, and you get the storytelling. It's not the tennis quality, because the tennis quality is going to be good enough anyway. These are professional players. They are great players. But the drama and the story is sometimes missing. And that I think tennis needs to focus on more. How do we package the product that is already good to sell that?
Right, 100%. Yeah, 'cause I can agree. I mean, you go back, obviously I'm a fan of Danil, but like Danil and Zverev in Monte Carlo, just the whole thing with the crowd telling him to like quality was not a great match, but like that's a very memorable match of the year. Like that, because that was insane. But yeah, I think, well, I don't know where that comes from, because tennis is like in a weird thing, because it's like tournament by tournament, unless the ATP just decides, all right, we're going to try to like start creating storylines and do stuff like that, which they totally could, they should. But I don't know, maybe, well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully something like that starts to develop, because it would make it a lot more interesting, especially just for casual people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I agree with everything you said there, and also Medvedev is one of my favorite players because I think his honesty and kind of like odd octopus style of tennis is very marketable in itself. Like, but it's also like you need someone to actually be blunt, you know, and just say whatever. I think it's great for tennis.
100%. Yeah, I feel like a lot of players are kind of because they'll get caught in like a soundbite or something, or afraid to actually give like a proper opinion. Something that I've realized kind of starting to become more of a proper, member of the media is when I was in San Diego, there was another journalist there. Like the news had just dropped of Simona Halep and her case, and she was just asking the question of how do you feel about the process? Is it fair? Not so much how you feel about Simona, but just when they come test you, are you properly notified? What is that like? And Maria Sakkari gave a great soundbite. Actually, it was like the question wasn't like with any malice. It was just kind of like, hey, what is it like for you? Maria gave a great answer of like, yeah, you know what, I have to be super careful. Sometimes I'm afraid to even take electrolytes because I don't know. And so that soundbite got put on Twitter. It was miscredited to begin with. It got put on Twitter, and then like Nick Kyrgios goes, "Oh, why are all these players complaining?" And like Maria wasn't complaining; she was just kind of answering the question. It was in a very thoughtful, interesting answer, but it kind of became a whole shitstorm in a way. It wasn't massive, but like if you were looking at it, it came off very different than how it went in person in that moment. And that's when I kind of realized like, oh, this is why players don't really want to talk, because it can very easily be taken out of context. And I mean, that's kind of the criticism of tennis players. It's like, oh, there's no personality or anything. I'm sure they're fun. I'm sure there are a lot of fun people that have great personalities, but they're probably a little bit afraid to get caught up in some nonsense. It could affect their marketability or anything like that, to where things can get out of hand very quickly, even if it was in a small thing like what I witnessed basically in San Diego.
I think that leads to a very important point because you said it is like social media is obviously a weapon or can be weaponized very quickly. So like one wrong quote, and I've seen it on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, and it's just snowballs. It's like a misquote that then someone influential comments on, which gives it some validity, although it was a misquote and nobody knows that or tries to change that because it's happening so fast. And then suddenly it's a snowball, and then you have like a shitstorm coming from nowhere, which is not even like has any real validity. It's just like made up kind of from this
Exactly.
misquote. So I completely understand from the player's point of view, and I think I think there's something that media creators. I'm trying to put that if I'm creating media or doing interviews, whatever, I don't want to put anyone in like an unnecessary bad light or just create like this drama from nothing right now, or because I don't feel good doing that, because you can put yourself in the player's shoes, even if you could get some clicks or some views or some extra. I think it's, as a creator, it's better to have the integrity, kind of how media used to be in the old days. Nowadays, like everybody's kind of trying to clickbait, even the New York Times, to just be like, okay, let's not chase clicks. Let's give the story. Let's try to be as balanced as possible and give an entertaining or informative story out of this. I think that is the way to act. But that's also kind of maybe my old-fashioned, old-school view. But it's like how I try to do it.
Same, man. It kind of should be that way. At least I feel I'm not, properly trained in media, but when I was there just kind of observing, and I watched this happen, and I was kind of like, whoa, and I even almost felt bad. One of my questions to Maria was because she came without her coach. She mentioned that she's like, I came out here on my own. I needed some time away, and this is like right after the US Open, where she kind of had, lost on the first day and kind of broke down in the media room. Um, and I started to ask my question in the middle. I was like, oh shit, am I setting her up for something bad? 'Cause my thing was like, how does it feel to be here without your team? Does it take you back to junior days, having to figure it out on your own, stuff like this? And her answer was like, no, actually being away from them made me realize how much I actually need them. And but when I was asking it, I was like, dang, did I set that up badly? I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to like fire your coach or anything like that, because they're a great team, obviously. And what was funny about that is like literally the next week wins her first WTA 1000 with the coach back in her box. So that's like kind of a nice story, nice moment of the year. But I realized you kind of have to be kind of careful about like how you frame things and ask things, or even how you post things on social media, because sometimes I'll post, it's usually with the big three, I'll post whatever, and then I look at the comments and it's like chaos, and I'm like, how did this happen? Like, it has nothing to do with what I posted, but it's how it goes, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we all have to navigate this. Like it's a treacherous minefield, like social media, because like you might have an intention with a story or a question, and like I said, it's like it can change quite drastically, and you don't wanna. It's a tougher in an individual sport like tennis because the players are generally nice people. They want to go on with their lives. Playing tennis is already a hassle because there's so much stuff involved. Doing media stuff maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people are just born for it and very natural and very good at doing press conference. We have Daniil, we have maybe Nick sometimes if he's in the mood, and other guys, and Roger and Novak. They're like super pros of press conferences. But then for some people, it's just like, I just play tennis. I'm one of the best in the world at playing tennis. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have like social media on me, or they have like these death threats from gamblers losing money and stuff. So it can be a grim side of that as well. So I think you always have to keep that in the back of your head when you're being a journalist or being a media guy or girl.
Right, 100%. Dang. Well, I'll let you go, man.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tony. It was great. Like, let's do it again at some point. Hopefully, we can meet in person. That would also be great. I need to get to the States. I haven't been in a few years, so it's about time after COVID
Yeah,
now to get back and watch some tennis and meet some tennis people. I have so many people I know there, so
I
it would be
bet.
great.
Yeah, come through. And I actually might be your way, because I'm gonna go see my buddy. I'm ready probably next summer. So I'll let you know if I'm that way. I'm sure we'll talk before then, but yeah, definitely, man. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
That was awesome. Yeah, yeah. And good luck on your adventures now going to Cancun and following the tour. I think that's great, and I'll keep watching your content and hopefully more of these memes, because I think also it's great for tennis to use other channels and forms of communication to kind of grow the sport, or get some more eyeballs.
Yeah, it translates well. It's something that I didn't think would, like, because for a little bit in the beginning, I was kind of just entertaining myself in a way, and it's like well, I mean, I'm a tennis player and it relates to other tennis players, so it's gone pretty well. So I'm gonna keep at it and kind of see where it leads me.
Awesome, man. Well, have a nice day now, and we keep in touch.
All right, man, sounds good. See ya.